I'm Doug Cunningham. 500,000 U.S. steel industry jobs are at risk from surging steel imports, according to a report from the Economic Policy Institute. The new study highlights the threats posed by the flood of imports and excess global steel capacity. United Steelworkers President Leo Gerard says this should be a wake-up call to Congress and the Obama administration. The U.S. steel sector supports up to 500,000 jobs that are at risk from a flood of unfairly priced and traded steel imports, according to Gerard. Gerard says our economic and national security interests are at risk, and political leaders appear to be sitting on their hands.
15 in a union. We can't survive on 725. 15 in a union. We can't survive on 725. 15 in a union.
Chants like these went up in 150 U.S. cities and in at least 30 other countries Thursday as fast food workers walked off their jobs. The one-day strike action is part of the fast food worker fight for $15 an hour and the right to form a union without employer retaliation. On a Taco Bell strike line in Madison, Wisconsin, single mom and Arby's striker Amanda Keller said organizing is the best hope for fast food workers looking for higher wages and improved working conditions. She says her coworkers are paying attention to this movement.
Yeah, we have talked about it, and it's, they're saying it's a great idea to start joining and see how much our managers and our CEOs really need us. But they don't realize it until, we leave the store. It's really hard for us, and we have to rely on the state for food stamps and for health care and for what else we need.
Chop, chop from the top. Make the bosses take the losses. Chop, chop from the top. Make the bosses take the losses.
Seattle's 15 Now coalition launched its petition drive Thursday to put a $15 an hour minimum wage on Seattle's ballot. Socialist Seattle City Council member Kshama Sawant was the first to sign the petition outside of McDonald's. Low-wage workers and their supporters want a real $15 an hour minimum wage in Seattle with a shorter phase-in period than the mayor's plan and no tip or health care penalties. The Illinois law cutting pensions for public employees is on hold, blocked by a court order as a result of lawsuits brought by workers and their unions. Labor went to court because cutting public worker pensions is against the Illinois state constitution. The law was to have taken effect June 1st. The We Are One Illinois Labor Coalition cheered the judge's order. Illinois AFL-CIO President Michael Kerrigan says the ruling is an important first step in efforts to overturn an unconstitutional law and to protect retirement security for working people in Illinois. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Rick Smith Show.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
Abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I could drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead, make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
East and west side, people don't surrender. They've been down, but they're still right on. Oh, and this time is my time. All right, love or hate, it don't matter. 'Cause I'm gonna stand and fight. This time is my time. She got her ups and downs, but love or hate, it don't matter. 'Cause this is my time.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks for being here tonight on the big program. Lots of things to get to, lots of things to talk about. Wow, what a day in Washington, D.C. Oh, my goodness. The wall-to-wall people packed in like sardines. Occupy America, Operation American Spring, success. I guess it depends on what idiot you're talking to. 30 million. Think about that for a second. Just for 1 second. If you're the organizer And this is what's very interesting to me. You've got people who are attempting to do political organizing who have not a clue of what they're doing. Anybody who knows, when you book a room, you book a very small room. You pack people in so it looks like they're overflowing. You don't say, we're going to bring 30 million people into the Capitol. On a Friday, we're going to bring in 40 million people, 30 million people on a Friday, where most people should have jobs, and think you're going to get them in through the public transportation system. You're going to get them situated. Good luck. It's just not going to happen, and we know it's not going to happen. And they had to know it wasn't going to happen. And this is one of the things that just kind of, and I'm going to spend a bit of time on this tonight, because the sad reality is we've given too much to the Insaniacs. We've given too much time to these folks who really aren't all that brilliant. We really haven't told them to sit down and shut up. I mean, at some point, look, I'm a fan of, people having their right to stand up and speak and be heard. But at some point, when you're just babbling for the sake of babbling, sit down already. And I look at some of the, I've kind of taken to Twitter a little bit. Since my producer left, I've kind of gone, let's see what this is about. And as I've been reading through some of the comments that people have been posting, a lot of scary stuff. One of the big ones for me, because I think Glenn Beck has left the path. He's off well into the weeds. And the sad thing is I guess he was saying, look, there's just no there. There's nothing here. And then you've got all of these people who are, wow, Glenn Beck's lying that there's nobody here, that Glenn Beck's lying that nobody's paying attention, because, well, nobody's paying attention. But it's interesting, when you see these tweets of Glenn Beck's a traitor. Now, I'm not a guy who's at all going to, look, I'm just not going to defend Glenn Beck. I'm not going to come running to his aid. But when he's not wrong. I mean, he's insane, but he's not wrong for saying what is, and what was is nothing. There was literally nothing there. And as I look at this, you kind of got to wonder, from a media perspective, have we given insanity too much? When you look at these folks who really, yesterday we kind of made a joke about their math, where they said, we're gonna cut taxes and we're gonna do away with Washington, and the American middle class, their paychecks will double. And you go, really? Do they really believe this? Or is it just something that someone mentioned and they go, oh, that sounds like a good idea, we should go with that? I've got to tell you, I hear folks, and the more I read their writings, I come to a couple of different conclusions. One of them is the wealth class has done an amazing job of funding provocateurs, people who are going to stir the pot, that are going to take the mentally challenged in our community, the deluded, the very angry curmudgeon type, and rile them up for one purpose, and that's just to keep the pot boiling, to keep people separated, to keep people pitted against one another. And it's very interesting to me that they chose the 16th when the 15th was an extraordinarily successful labor campaign across this country, where workers, not just across the country, but across the globe, where workers were saying, look, we demand a fair share of our labor. It's curious to me, and it should be curious to you as well, that this kind of stuff pops up. This was meant to fail. You knew from the beginning that this was a failure. It was a distraction. and I was saying this yesterday, it's a joke, but it's a funded joke. It's something that the wealth class of this country wants to keep out in front of us. They don't want to touch it. They don't want to be anywhere near it, but they want to use their front groups to continually cause chaos, to stir the pot, to be the distraction. So all day today, what was the message? All day today, what was the discussion? Well, if you looked at some of the news stories, if it wasn't the kitten that saved the child from the dog, which is, I guess, good security footage and good for the cat. I'm not a big fan of cats, but in that case, the cat did something right. But if you notice the news coverage, it was about nothing being there. And then the discussion of nothing. And then the discussion of, people are mad, and completely away from the workers. Completely. And I argue that that's by design. I think it was completely by design that they chose this day specifically. Because I got to believe, and I got to believe that the people who organized this, the ones at the top of the food chain, not the people who were marching around with their hats and their belt buckles, not the ones who were just the outsiders, the useful idiots. The ones at the top who said, well, let's pick the day, the ones who picked the event and understand the process. They're the ones who know that this is about money. There's a lot of money to be had. If you can start mobilizing these folks, if you can start getting them to be that group of useful idiots, there's money to be made, especially from the wealth class of this country. And what then happens, and there's part of me that, and this is, it sounds conspiratorial, but understand there's considerable labor strife in this country. When you see the latest poll that I talked about the other night, 85% of the people polled were unhappy with their jobs, unhappy with the pay, the benefits, unhappy with the conditions. There is in my view, there's a limit to what people are willing to take before they start to organize. And we saw this in the fast food industry. 18 months ago, when I started saying, you know what, the conditions are looking like they're going to be ripe for people to say, there's only so much of you know what I'm willing to eat, and I'm at that point. And it was just a handful of people in New York at the time saying, we demand $15 an hour. And people said, oh, they're just crazy. And then a couple of months later, there were more. And a couple of months later, there were more. Until yesterday, in 150 cities, in 30 countries, on 6 different continents, you had people standing together saying that work should be rewarded. There should be dignity for that work. And that they stand with each other. Not to destroy, but to build up. And to organize. And as I've been saying, that scares the hell out of the wealth class in this country and globally. They don't want someone sharing the profits. They're quite happy with their hands on the steering wheel. They're very happy being in control. And things like that didn't happen today. And you got to wonder how much, and I'm actually looking into how the genesis of this operation American Spring, where the genesis of this whole scheme came up. And you got to wonder if it's not going to be traced back to some big money donor who said, you know what, let's stir the pot a little bit. So as I look at this, again, most of the people that I asked about it had not heard of it. And what they did here, they're going to take the president to the Bundy Ranch to be deposed. Really? They're going to kick all of the members out of Congress, and they're going to take them all over in an Egyptian-style occupation. Really? Think about how dangerous just the message of that is. And think about the intention. And I've asked, and I'm going to ask the question all night, what would have happened yesterday had fast food workers showing up to the picket line, claiming to be armed to the teeth, claiming to be armed with AR-15s. What response do you think they would have gotten? And it's one of those questions that I've been thinking about all day today. What would have happened? Especially considering that they're minorities. You kind of got to wonder, don't you? Anyway, we're going to take your thoughts, your questions, your comments, whatever's on your mind. If you were one of the 6 people who went to the Operation American Spring, I would love to hear from you. We couldn't get any of those folks. I tried to reach out to whoever I could that may have known one of them, and it's they a little shy. It's kind of a beating of a day, but we're going to continue to try because I would love to talk to Crazy. So if you're one of those, I would love to talk to you. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
The Rick Smith Show.
It's May 16th, 2014, and time for the world in 2 minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, reporting for Talk Radio News Service at the United Nations in New York. The world's largest election is in the books. More than 550 million Indians voted in the country's nationwide elections, which were held over a period of 5 weeks. In addition to record turnout, this year's campaign marked a change in Indian political history.
This election is being described as the first real presidential-style election.
That was Gur Harpal Singh, Dean of the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London.
The overall process and how it's been conducted, I think, has been quite remarkable. The fact that within a day now, we are almost at the end point of the counting.
India's next Prime Minister will be Narendra Modi, previously the top politician of Gujarat state. He's known for being a master planner, and he may be just the latest Indian leader whose public policy pronouncements far outweigh actual achievements. But Singh says there's a chance Modi could truly shake things up.
The resounding success of Narendra Modi is that in a 6 or 7 week campaign, he's been able to sell a mission and vision of India, which chimes with the vast majority of young people, and they want to see the pace of economic change accelerating.
And we're less than a month away from the start of the World Cup in Brazil, but much to the frustration of the country's leaders, labor strikes and public protests have broken out across 12 cities this week. One of the foremost gripes of demonstrators is the cost of prepping the stadiums for the tournament, and there are claims that repairs to Rio's Maracanã...
Hey there, fellow working class heroes. I have some great news. You can now get the Rick Smith Show podcast on your iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, or Palm on demand and on the go. Get your class war to go by downloading the Stitcher app on your smartphone by going to Stitcher.com and search for The Rick Smith Show, or go to our website at thericksmithshow.com and click on our Stitcher button. Together we can, and we will, rebuild a prosperous working class and leave opportunity for our children.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME. We make Pennsylvania happy!
Minimum wage! Yeah!
You know what it means when they pay you minimum wage? You know what they're trying to tell you? Is like, hey, if I could pay you less, I would.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. So last Saturday, Vermont, like I said yesterday, Vermont became the state that is probably going to have the highest minimum wage here in the U.S. They have, their lawmakers have passed a law that will boost the minimum hourly wage up to $10.50 per hour, which would make them the highest. But I look over in Sweden, where Swiss officials are talking about voting on Sunday to establish a minimum wage of $25 an hour, which, evidently would make their agriculture, their housekeeping, their catering folks, the highest paid unskilled workforce in the world. And you got to wonder what the right wing in those countries are saying. And that country is saying, "Oh, we can't afford it. We won't get cheap domestic help." Share the love is what I say. Anyway, here to talk a little bit about the minimum wage here in Pennsylvania as the campaign ramps up. Raise the minimum wage, or raisethewagepa.org is their website. I've asked John Dodds. He's the director of the Philadelphia Unemployment Project to come talk with us. John, thanks for taking time for us.
Okay, I'm glad to be here, Rick.
What are the chances of this happening? I mean, we've got a Republican governor, Republican House, Republican Senate.
Well, the chance is good it's going to happen. The question is, how long is it going to take? 70% of the population in Pennsylvania supports an increased minimum wage, most of them $10.10 an hour and even higher than that. But it's not yet become a big political issue, and that's what we're trying to do, make it a political issue so the elected politicians have to take a stand on it. So we'll see. We'd like it to be an issue in the November election, and maybe we'll have people want to get rid of that issue before the elections and pass something. But we'll see. We don't know.
Yeah, well, one of the arguments against raising the minimum wage, you're going to kill jobs. A job killer, John. You don't want to kill jobs, do you?
Yeah, that's our main objective, is killing jobs. That's a funny thing. The business people never concerned about low-wage people at all until they come to something like the minimum wage, and then they're worried about their jobs. They're never worried about jobs. They're worried about not paying money. But, I mean, one of the things that we can look at, is this theory, but the actual practice was back in 2006 and 2007, when the last time we raised the minimum wage, we raised it by 39% from $5.15 to $7.15, and the actual reality is that jobs were increased even in food service and drinking establishments. The whole time the raised wage was increased by 39%, there was an increase in employment that went all the way deep into the recession. We're still increasing jobs in the service sector. So the fact is, even though they claimed it was going to be this terrible jobs killer, even in the area that most pays low wages, saw an increase in employment. So I think the scare tactics did not play out in Pennsylvania. Maybe they'll play out in Oregon or someplace. But in our state, we just finished doing it, and we did not see job loss. We actually saw continued job growth in those areas.
So in looking at this, I mean, there are a number of plans out there. There's one for $10.10, one for $10.50. I think McCord wanted, $12, or was it Stack who wanted $12?
Dale and Leach and Stack, yeah.
Yeah, so you're seeing all these different numbers. What's the right number? I mean, yesterday we saw what I think is an amazing display of solidarity across the country and across the globe of workers, saying, "Hey, we want $15 an hour." What's the right number?
Well, whatever the right number is the number that we can get for people. I mean, if we could get 15, that would be a right number. But a lot of those demands are for really asking for some of the major corporations to come up with 15. The McDonald's and the Burger Kings and the multi-billion profit companies can certainly afford to pay that. In fact, at the rally we had in Philadelphia a couple weeks ago, we had workers from New Zealand that were McDonald's workers that make $14.25 an hour at McDonald's in New Zealand. And they're, doing just fine. And they can afford to pay it there because they have a union and they have a country that supports the workers. So $15 can be paid by big corporations. But I don't know that that's going to happen in the state of Pennsylvania with the Republican control. So we're saying at least $10.10 an hour. And that would be not immediately, but it would be over time. But, we'll see. We don't call the shot. The politicians in the end will pass a bill, but we're pushing for at least $10.10. And a lot of the people that are calling for 15 are part of our coalition, and we want a major increase in the minimum wage. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. At the end of this, doesn't it appear to you? Because it appears to me that the question is do we really value work in this country? Because we've allowed this low wage economy to prop up all around us, and we've actually heavily subsidized it with our tax dollars. To me, the question then becomes: do we really value work as a nation?
Well, working people do. We value it. We're hard-working people, and we want to go to work. But I think a lot of people at the top, the 1%, don't think much of workers at all, and they don't work. A lot of them don't work at all themselves. But I mean, one of the things you see is that we're going to, if we were to raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour, we'd see a big decrease in the use of food stamps because people would not qualify anymore because they have enough income not to get them. So we really want people to work, and we really want to stop putting out money for things like food stamps. Let's pay people enough money so they're not eligible for food stamps anymore. They can buy their food on their own.
Yeah, one of the things I often said about Mitt Romney's comments about the 47% is, the reality is these are people who work, the vast majority of them, who don't make enough to pay federal income tax. I think every one of them would be thrilled to death to pay federal income tax if it meant they were making enough money to pay it.
Of course, and those folks all pay plenty of state and local taxes, and they pay a larger percentage of their income for taxes than this supposed 1% with their terrible tax burdens. So the people at the bottom are paying more taxes, not less, and even if it's not federal income tax, they're paying taxes. So yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would be happy to make a couple $100,000 and pay whatever taxes came with it.
Yeah, I know I would.
Hell yeah.
So I guess I understand you guys had a really good, amazing statewide number of events statewide on May 8th. Lots of very good coverage, as I saw.
Yeah. We set up this coalition. It started basically just in March, and it's called Raise the Wage PA. It's got a lot of people in the labor movement and the religious community. A lot of the neighborhood-based organizations are part of it. And we had a statewide day of action on May 8th. 8 cities held concerted actions, and we did get a lot of coverage. A lot of people were on the streets. Philadelphia, we marched through the Gallery Shopping Mall with about 100 people, and we had a much bigger crowd than after the rally. We had rallies in Lancaster and Erie, in Doylestown, in Delaware County, and in Wilkes-Barre and Erie and Pittsburgh. So it was good, and we're taking the message out of the obvious places like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh out into some of the other communities where we really have to reach to be successful. So.
Well, I keep saying, right where I'm at here in the Harrisburg area, where I live in Carlisle, the center of the state, this is where the message, this is where the battle really is, because I know a lot of people who are making, below the poverty line, yet still vote for these Republicans who have held the minimum wage down and who have done everything that they can possibly do to destroy our middle class. And it just seems very, idiotic that given the economic circumstance of a lot of the people that I know, and compare that with their voting habits, it comes down to information.
Well, we were quite involved the last increase to $7.15, and one of the things we did is we got on the radio out in sort of in the center part of the state and really put the message out there that their legislators have a chance to really raise their wage, and it seemed to, from what we hear, made a difference. A lot of those people in the small towns were talking to their legislators, and a lot of times they didn't realize how little their constituents made. They just assumed they made good money. I mean, I think that's one of the things sometimes these politicians think is that everybody's doing great, and all of a sudden be confronted with a lady that's pouring your coffee at Wawa, and she's making minimum wage. And it shocked a few of them and helped us, I think, moving along. So we do have to move in those areas. And we did have an event in Lancaster. We had an event in Harrisburg. We're well covered, and so we're hoping to keep that going and really reach out to people in the center part of the state as well as on the east and the west.
And you've got another event coming up here on June the 3rd at the Capitol, right?
Yeah, we're going to have a rally and lobby day on June 3rd. It's going to be at the Capitol steps at 1 o'clock. It's a Tuesday, and we really encourage everybody to come out. I mean, there's a lot of momentum building around the state, you know, with these fast food worker strikes and the day of action and so on. And the more we push, the more it's going to be something that these elected officials have to take on. I mean, what they want to do is just ignore the issue. They don't want to deal with it, but we're going to force them to deal with it and take a stand.
Absolutely.
So that's an important day for people to come out June 3rd.
Well, we will make sure that we're there. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show with John Dodds, director of the Philadelphia Unemployment Project. The project now, Raise the Wage PA, raisethewagepa.org, the website. We've got links at thericksmithshow.com. You can also check out their Facebook page and follow them on Twitter, hashtag Raise the Wage PA. Let me ask you this, because yesterday in talking to some of the fast food workers, alongside of the $15 an hour that they're demanding in wages, they're also demanding a voice on the job, the right to union recognition. Isn't that really the bigger part of all this? I mean, you can raise the minimum wage,
absolutely,
but shouldn't we be talking about giving workers the opportunity to bargain locally for their wages, hours, and conditions?
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, what we've gone from a manufacturing industrial economy to a service economy, and at one point that manufacturing economy paid terrible wages too, until the workers organized and unionized all over the country, and bosses got smart and moved all the work out of this United States. So I think we're at the same point now with the service sector. We've got to organize those people. We've got to organize those fast food industries and all those kind of service jobs, hospitality jobs, and so forth, and make them pay a decent wage. And they can pay a decent wage, and the employers really can't move them. I mean, that's the beauty of it. They're going to move the McDonald's to China. I mean, they're going to have to stay. So, yeah, I think that's a key issue. It's been a key issue. If we can find a way to organize the service sector in a serious way, we can really start making those real living wage jobs, not the bottom jobs that they are now.
So what do we do to help? What does Rick Smith do? What do our listeners do aside from go to the website raisethewagepa.org or the Facebook page or Twitter? We
have a petition, online petition. We want people to sign up. It'll be a way to get back in touch with you. Obviously, contact your legislators. I mean, they need to be hearing from us right away. That's the other thing that's gone. If you can get there on June 3rd, that's important. But sign up for that online petition, and we'll be contacting you through that. But it's going to be an ongoing process. It's going to be different pressure points we're going to have to get to, committee chairs and so forth, where they are holding up these bills, and we've got to put pressure on them. So if you're interested, get in touch with us, and we will keep you on our list and let you know when things are happening.
There you go, and make sure you get out and vote on Tuesday, May 20th, because I think whoever's sitting in the governor's seat. That's a big part of this as well.
Well, I think, and even more importantly, it's going to be the vote in November. Governor Corbett is against raising the minimum wage, along with a lot of other things he's against. And, I think I know all the Democratic candidates are supporting an increase to at least $10.10 an hour. So that needs to be an issue in the election. And Corbett's been turning on a few things, trying to make himself look a little better. Maybe he'll turn on this one.
We shall see.
Maybe we'll see him changing his stripes on this issue.
There you go. John Dodds, I appreciate you taking time for us. Thanks so much.
All right, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Again, on June 3rd, State Capitol, big rally. Come out for Rally and Lobby Day. RaiseTheWagePA.org, the website. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street.
California, wilting and burning.
A massive oil spill near Glendale overnight.
Oil pipeline bursts in Los Angeles. Plus,
climate change is a present threat to our defense and national security.
Military leaders warn climate change threatens national security. So,
why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green fuel?
Fox News attacks the military.
Of course they do. All of those attacks and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Scientists warn that a large part of Antarctica is melting and cannot be stopped.
Unstoppable melting. It's out of our hands now. I didn't think it would happen, but we finally ran the clock out on the possibility of my personal sacrifice making a difference.
Congratulations. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we have been talking for weeks about the unstoppable heat out here on the West Coast. Today, once again, we are hitting 100 degrees here in Los Angeles. That is not normal for this time of year. Let me connect a few dots. We have an update from the Turkish coal explosion. In our last report, there were hundreds of miners trapped. We now have a tragic update, 282 so far dead there.
Yes, and about 150 still missing as rescue operations continue, but hope is waning for that.
And that all comes from burning fossil fuel, which brings us back out here to California, which is sweltering, wilting, and now on fire.
Yes.
Climate change is happening now, not in the future, right now.
Yep.
Breaking overnight. At least 9 fires now spreading rapidly, erupting one right after another.
Fast-moving wildfires forced residents of Carlsbad, California, a suburb of San Diego, to literally run for their lives.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street. Do not attempt to grab your cars at this moment.
Don't gather your belongings. Don't even take your car. Just grab your loved ones and run.
The evacuations included Legoland, a nuclear power plant, parts of a military base, and untold residences.
20,000 people have been evacuated, dozens of homes destroyed in the San Diego area. At least 9 major wildfires erupted in just the last 24 hours, and this is just as fire officials warned would happen, with record drought happening simultaneously with that record heat wave and unseasonably early Santa Ana winds. On Thursday, San Diego had its highest temperature ever recorded for the entire month of May. California's relentless new wildfire season is shaping up to be the worst ever. 2 months ago, the U.S. Forest Service warned that across-the-board budget cuts brought on by the sequestration, remember that deal struck to avoid a government shutdown? They warned that would severely curtail federal wildfire fighting efforts. Agency officials say they have been forced to hire 500 fewer firefighters and 50 fewer fire engines than last year.
Brilliant.
And did we mention that April 2014 was the second warmest April on record globally?
No, but on Fox News, they told me the globe was cooling. Does that count?
No, it does not. They lie to people. Meanwhile, no, that is not the sound of rain, which would be welcome in Los Angeles. That's the sound of a geyser of crude oil spewing 20 feet high, dumping 10,000 gallons of crude oil in the Los Angeles suburb of Glendale. Half a mile of city streets covered knee-deep in some places. Fire officials say they were pretty sure it didn't get into the city's water system.
That spill was just minutes away from Brad Blog World News headquarters. Do we have to worry about breathing any of that in?
No, it's too far away for us, but thank goodness none of it caught fire. Climate change is a growing security threat, a threat multiplier, says a new report from a panel of retired U.S. military leaders.
Climate change poses a threat to our military installations, and when these facilities are imperiled, so is troop readiness.
The Center for Naval Analyses Military Advisory Board warns that extreme weather will spark unrest in unstable regions, unravel global networks of trade and resources, impact U.S. coastal military infrastructure, and stretch the U.S. military's readiness to respond to multiple threats. It's vitally important to act now, says retired Brigadier General Gerald Galloway.
Waiting to make the case for action until runways and training areas are underwater or put out of business by extreme events is not the way to go.
The Defense Department has already launched an ambitious research and development program to develop alternative fuels and to be less vulnerable to oil price spikes and supply issues at distant forward operating bases in war zones. So, of course, Fox News attacks the military.
Why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green jet fuel made with algae?
The reason why is because thousands of attacks on fuel convoys in Afghanistan exposed the military's huge vulnerability in relying on oil in hostile territories.
And I'm guessing Fox News never bothered to tell its viewers that the war in Syria is directly related to the 4-year drought in that region that led up to that war. Keep your audience stupid, Fox. You're doing a great job. For much more on that story and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
While you're there, please consider a donation to help support the Green News Report or to help us buy some fans around here. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your sweltering Green News Report.
Standing tall against a multinational corporate agenda. The Rick Smith Show.
Decent days, quality is in play. Work you should organize without haste. Have the vote in your workplace. Work with your manager face to face. Let's go! It's starting again. The change, a new laboring. Support the EFCA. Let's go! It started again.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Got an email during the break. John points out that organizing on the labor side, good thing. Organizing on crazy conservative side, not such a good thing. Organizing with guns, not such a good thing for democracy. And look, at the end of all of this, while we're talking about the Operation American Spring, which I think one of my favorite comments on this was that. I thought I'd be able to find 30 million people. Evidently, I didn't. Or the one where the guy said, well, look out, DC's going to turn crazy at 5 o'clock when the chain restaurant is closed or is full or there's a waiting line. Today, just a very interesting day for me. In watching this, and I guess I had hoped a couple of thousand maybe. Just for some comic, and I was watching the feed, and I guess maybe I was just the dupe. Because I gotta wonder how many people were watching, going, well, where are they? In fact, as I was watching the Twitter feed, like probably 80% of the people on there were mocking them. And you kind of gotta wonder, if you've got a movement where the vast majority of people are mocking you, do you really have a movement? And as I said earlier, there are a lot of things that we should be organizing around. Absolutely, positively, without question, there are a ton of things that we should be organizing around. The stuff that these people are throwing out, not so much. We should be organizing around the idea of raising living standards. We should be organizing around the idea of we need job creation. We should be organizing around the fact that we've got a president and a Congress that's kind of thinking about passing the mother of all really bad freaking trade deals. How much did we hear about the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Agreement today? Nada. What we did hear about? We heard about nobody showing up to something that I said nobody was going to show up to it. Do you remember the truckers' rally for the Constitution? Remember that? They were going to bring in 1 million trucks. They were going to jam the streets, and there were like 6. And they all got tickets for driving in the left lane when they weren't supposed to. And they, whined and complained, and then they went away. And you look at this and you go, when you have something that seems rational, and none of this stuff seems rational to me, which part of me thinks this is kind of the point, to turn us all away, to make us all go, oh, again, all of this political stuff. There's part of me that thinks that. There's part of me that goes, all of this is by design, to keep us turning off news channels, to keep us turning off any programs that may have some actual intelligent thought going on, and then turning to American Idol or Storage Wars or any of these other number of mind-numbing, hour-wasting programs. Like I watched for like 2 minutes. Turned something on last night where they evidently they kidnap somebody, they throw them out of a plane and then leave them somewhere, and they have to find their way back. And I go, okay, well, okay, good, yeah. But somebody actually thought about marketing this. that someone would watch this. And maybe somebody does. I don't know. Maybe I've gotten that out of touch to where this stuff just, you kind of got to wonder, where as a nation are we going? Is it our education system? Is it the fact that we've standardized education downward? You know, no child left behind means we're dumbing down everything so that we have these kind of yokels who run around going, we're in charge. And you go, well, how did you get in charge? Well, because my gun's bigger than yours. Well, look, I'm not an anti-gun guy. But this kind of stuff, this kind of, we're going to overthrow the government, we're going to do this nonsense. At some point, don't rational people have to say, hey, you know, sit down? Just curious. Quick break, right back.
Trees of green, red roses too. I see them blue for me and you, and I say to myself, what a wonderful world.
Yes, it is all about the children, even after they're born. Rick Smith.
Would you dive 14 feet deep in the Susquehanna to keep a bridge safe? Would you spend night after night with prisoners to keep your community safe? Would you spend Christmas Eve plowing snow to keep roads safe? AFSCME members do. Men and women who choose to serve in public service. Mine inspectors, 911 dispatchers, healthcare workers, parole agents. You may not think about them, but no, they're all thinking about you. This message brought to you by AFSCME Council 13.
Who says the economy is down and that consumers aren't willing to spend in order to stimulate new economic growth? The problem with gloomy economists and skittish policymakers is that they don't know where to look for signs that boom times are back, baby. For example, take auto sales. Yeah, overall they're putzing along at a moderate to low pace, but open your eyes, people. Do you not see that Maserati sales were up 55% last year? Or that Rolls-Royce, Lamborghini, Porsche, and Bentley also produced double-digit increases? Listen to Matt Lavin, a Cleveland high roller who told the New York Times that he bought 3 Mercedes last year, one for $237,000, another for $165,000, and an auxiliary $97,000 number for his wife. Extravagant? It's all a matter of perspective. I look at it as I don't have a boat, Matt explains. There you go. Economics is all about having a positive attitude. So, with a booming stock market, high-tech wealth bubbling like crazy, and Fortune 500 CEOs making big bales of hay while the sun shines, what's not to like about America's economic future? An automotive lifestyle consultant told the Times, luxury is not a dirty word anymore. Now, isn't that a telling insight? You see, when Wall Street crashed 6 years ago, then got bailed out by Washington while the middle class sank, many of your 1%ers and higher got squeamish about living the luxurious life they deserve. But that's not the American way. Hey, if you've got it, flaunt it. This is Jim Hightower saying, surely we can all see the social value of top-end buyers who are willing to step up and make big-ticket purchases again. By leading the consumer charge, these bold luxury buyers are providing a role model that your lower classes need to do their own part in reviving America's economy.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's populist take on what the powers that be are up to. Find out more at hightowerlowdown.org.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show.
Just like time to say your prayer while you're waiting for the hammer to fall.
Did you see the story in Georgia? Again, you hear these people saying, we don't need national health care. We don't need no stinking health care for anybody. You don't like it, you can just die. This woman in Georgia evidently had gone to the emergency room and the doctors like 4 or 5 times. And they basically sent her away each time because she didn't have health insurance. Evidently, her husband had passed away several years ago, and she was never able to afford health insurance again and never got it. And one of those situations where maybe you're not poor enough to get on Medicare, maybe you're not poor enough to get the state assistance for the very poor, so you don't have anything. And this is one of my big complaints about our social safety net program, especially when you look at health care. Because, you know, if you're above the poverty line, if you're above that minimum line where you're indigent and we will take care of you, where you're just the working poor who, you know, just slaving away, you're the one who gets screwed. They're the ones who die young, 10 years, a decade younger. So this woman evidently, you know, had gone a number of times. Finally, the pain had gotten so bad that they called an ambulance, and the ambulance took her to this Emory University hospital, where the doctors found a beach ball-sized tumor in her stomach. And she said, you know, I thought I was just gaining weight, you know, because I don't know how you gain that much weight, but she thought over the couple of months that she was gaining weight. A beach ball-sized tumor that had wrapped around her ovaries, and you know, nobody would touch it. You don't have insurance. Get out. There's the door. Because, and this is one of the main points, the cons kept saying, and you remember Mitt Romney bringing it up, well, we're not going to let anybody die of a heart attack in their apartment. We'll go get them, and we'll take care of them. And that's if you're having a heart attack and dying at that very moment. If you're not in a death situation, they stabilize you, and they move you along. They don't have to fix you. They don't have, if you're not dying, if you're not going to get any worse, they don't really have to do anything. So this woman who's got this beach ball size tumor, which I guess is only going to grow larger and larger, she was sent packing. Evidently, the doctors at Emory University Hospital have said that they will do the surgery on June 10th, and they will get it out, because according to the doctors, they've never seen a tumor quite that large before. So I gotta wonder if it's just a wow, you know, I just can't wait to see how big this tumor is. Now the woman says, you know, I want it out now, but it's kind of a blessing that here in a couple of weeks I'm going to be able to get it out. My other question on that, what happens once they take it out? Do they then hound this woman for the rest of her natural life and probably into the grave as they harass her family, her next of kin, to collect the payments? Is this a situation where till the day she dies, she's going to be hounded by collection agents and her credit ruined and her life ruined? Is that what this woman's in for? Now, you got to get the tumor out, but for me, I keep saying, you know, we need to have some rational, sane healthcare laws. Now, Obamacare was supposed to take care of that. Evidently, this woman kind of fell through the cracks. And if you're in a state, which she's in a state like Georgia, but if you're in a state like Pennsylvania that says, well, we're not going to take the Medicaid expansion, we're going to have healthy Pennsylvania, which is a screw job. It's all of the really bad ideas that conservatives have had about their love of the free market. You know, high deductibles, no choice, you know, that stuff, the free market. Evidently, Indiana, the governor there, their anti-Obamacare governor, Mike Pence, evidently they're going to be taking the Medicaid expansion, much like how Pennsylvania's governor Corbett said that he was going to consider it. And really a very clever name, very thoughtful name, very, let me see, how's the best way to put this? Very creative, very original. I'm sure the governor in Indiana spent days and days debating and crafting and honing and bringing that Healthy Indiana title to the forefront. You got to wonder, again, now our governor didn't come up with Healthy Pennsylvania. He's not that bright. You got to wonder which Koch brother front group thought this up. You got to wonder which one of the shill groups, focus group tested, think tank approved this name. And of course, it's a lot of the same insanity that our governor here in Pennsylvania wants to do with the high deductibles and the cost sharing, because we want you to go out there in the free market and compare prices. Because while you're on your back, looking up at the stars, grabbing your chest, having a heart attack, with the one hand that you're grabbing your chest with, you should be speed dialing the other ones. Where the closest is, where the closest hospital is, what their rates are going to be. Maybe they've got a coupon. You might have a coupon. You're going to have to check the newspaper. Keep that coupon in your wallet because, buy one, get one free heart attacks. You never know when you're going to have two of them. And, I say that facetiously because, I think back to when my daughter broke her arm. And my only thought at the time was not, hey, who do I call to see what kind of deal I can get? It was how do I stop my kid's pain? How do I get the arm fixed? How do I get her the care she needed? And you went to the closest place, which is probably the worst idea, given the hospital that it is, a profit-driven hospital, and an 11-hour ordeal, and a nice, I think it was like $12,000 or $13,000 for a broken arm, which just stopped me cold in my tracks. Because what they had done is, I have really good health insurance, and I have never seen a bill, to be honest. Most of the bills just go right to the insurance company. The insurance pays it. You rarely see the bill, but you go to a for-profit hospital, and they're much more free with the bills. So they sent me a bill for what they wanted me to pay, and it was like $12,000 or $13,000, and it was outrageous. And I think at the end of it, I think the insurance company paid a couple thousand, $2,000 or $3,000. Which, when I first started working, when I was 18, 19 years old, the doctors had an insurance rate and a cash rate, and the insurance rate was higher than the cash rate. That has now completely gone the other way, to where if you're paying out of pocket, the costs of healthcare are actually higher than the negotiated rates for the healthcare, because you've got these HMOs and these PPOs and these AAOs and BBOs and whatever else they come up with, OOOs. And the little guy, the individual, screwed because they've really colluded the entire system. Which is why I keep saying we need to be breaking up the for-profit part of this and going back to rational, sane, community-type hospitals. I was born in a community hospital where the community paid for the structure. There was no profit taken out of it. This idea that we're going to spend money on our health care and somehow that there's a large portion of it going out to yachts and golf clubs and all of this other stuff is just ludicrous to me. So I look at Mike Pence, who some are now saying, well, another Republican caved, another red state caved on Obamacare. And I go, I don't quite know that you can call what they're doing a cave. What they're doing is they're trying to put all of their conservative idiocy into it. Deductibles and co-pays and all of that stuff that I think ruined healthcare to begin with. Because I don't know any boutique shoppers. I don't know anyone goes, oh, healthcare is free? I'm gonna go to the doctor every day. And even the grannies that they claim did that, seriously over-exaggerated. So it'll be interesting to see if the Obama administration approves Pence's request for a waiver. I guess it's going to be coming this June. It'll be interesting to see if the Obama administration accepts Corbett's. Because, again, what this governor has done, and I'm almost at the point where I don't want anything to happen until after the next governor takes office. Because Corbett can do nothing but screw up any opportunity that low-wage workers have at getting decent quality health care. But for me, this idea that you got a tumor in your stomach the size of a beach ball and no one will touch it just because you don't have insurance seems to me to be just completely and totally insane. Anyway, if you missed any portion of the program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go get the podcast. Stitcher on the smartphone. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, hour 2 of the program. Stick around. You'll listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
It's the Rick Smith Show on Country Gold Radio, WIOO Carlisle, and WEEO Shippensburg.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. 500,000 U.S. steel industry jobs are at risk from surging steel imports, according to a report from the Economic Policy Institute. The new study highlights the threats posed by the flood of imports and excess global steel capacity. United Steelworkers President Leo Gerard says this should be a wake-up call to Congress and the Obama administration. The U.S. steel sector supports up to 500,000 jobs that are at risk from a flood of unfairly priced and traded steel imports, according to Gerard. Gerard says our economic and national security interests are at risk, and political leaders appear to be sitting on their hands.
15 in a union. We can't survive on 725. 15 in a union. We can't survive on 725. 15 in a union.
Chants like these went up in 150 U.S. cities and in at least 30 other countries Thursday as fast food workers walked off their jobs. The one-day strike action is part of the fast food worker fight for $15 an hour and the right to form a union without employer retaliation. On a Taco Bell strike line in Madison, Wisconsin, single mom and Arby's striker Amanda Keller said organizing is the best hope for fast food workers looking for higher wages and improved working conditions. She says her co-workers are paying attention to this movement.
Yeah, we have talked about it, and it's, they're saying it's a great idea to start joining and see how much our managers and our CEOs really need us. But they don't realize it until, we leave the store. It's really hard for us, and we have to rely on the state for food stamps and for health care and for what else we need.
Chop, chop from the top. Make the bosses take the losses. Chop, chop from the top. Make the bosses take the losses.
Seattle's 15 Now coalition launched its petition drive Thursday to put a $15 an hour minimum wage on Seattle's ballot. Socialist Seattle City Council member Kshama Sawant was the first to sign the petition outside of McDonald's. Low-wage workers and their supporters want a real $15 an hour minimum wage in Seattle with a shorter phase-in period than the mayor's plan and no tip or health care penalties. The Illinois law cutting pensions for public employees is on hold, blocked by a court order as a result of lawsuits brought by workers and their unions. Labor went to court because cutting public worker pensions is against the Illinois state constitution. The law was to have taken effect June 1st. The We Are One Illinois Labor Coalition cheered the judge's order. Illinois AFL-CIO President Michael Kerrigan says the ruling is an important first step in efforts to overturn an unconstitutional law and to protect retirement security for working people in Illinois. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
Somebody's watching you, you like it. Somebody's watching you, you care.
The FCC chairman, this guy named Tom Wheeler. And I love this. I love it. I promise the big corporations won't steamroll you. I promise we're going to keep the internet open. I promise we're not going to do all of the things that, well, people like me think are actually going to happen. When you give these big companies this kind of control, it's my view that they're just going to steamroller over the little guy and the people with the money again. They're the ones who get out. And programs like ours, lots of small programs, small media outlets, not going to happen. The big boys are going to steam right over. And there will be, I do believe at some point, the fast lane that corporate America wants. But here to talk a little bit about recent developments and maybe what we can expect, I've asked Thomas Risen. He's a technology reporter over at U.S. World and News Report. Thomas, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you. Yes, nobody is happy about this except for Chairman Wheeler. There's a lot of people with opinions on this. I was at the FCC meeting yesterday, and a lot of internet freedom protesters got up and shouted during the meeting, and they had to be removed. There were protesters who were camping outside of the FCC for a week because they were concerned that this new proposal would create room for corporations to charge extra money for people to have a fast lane, to get better speeds. And it's not technically slowing down your traffic, but you're going to want to use someone who pays extra money to make the traffic better. And if smaller companies can't afford that, then that's de facto, that's another way to choose winners and losers online. So on one hand, Democrats and a lot of consumer advocates are concerned about that. On the other side, people who are also not happy are Republicans, most if not all Republicans, and some other big business groups who say there should not be any regulation of the internet at all because they're afraid it would stifle the free market. And so the FCC is between a rock and a hard place here. It's not unclear what they're going to do.
Yeah, because I keep asking, who's calling for this? Where's the demand for them to change what we have now, and who benefits from these changes? I know I don't benefit from them.
Well, this is the tricky thing. We don't have anything right now because net neutrality rules were struck down by a federal appeals court in January. There were rules in place, but Verizon sued the FCC, and they said, you don't have the authority to do this. You don't regulate the internet. Nobody regulates the internet. And Verizon won.
So shouldn't we be talking about more than that? Shouldn't we be talking about how do we regulate the internet?
Yes, that's exactly what's going to happen. Because these rules are not enacted yet. There's 120 days of public comment going on right now. So people, if you're upset with this, go to the FCC. Tell them what you want them to do because they're really, they're not sure what they're going to do either. They're going to go back and change their draft, and they're going to come back and they're going to vote on it 120 days from now. But they're really, Chairman Wheeler got some flack about being too hasty on this because there are no net neutrality rules in place right now. The federal court struck them down. There's no rules in place, and he wants to get something up on the books as soon as possible.
So, but in looking at this, because I keep going back to this, is it possible that you can have no rules and still have an open internet?
It's possible, but you have to trust giant companies.
Yeah, and I don't.
No, yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's why the government has tried to put, this is a big issue for the Obama administration, because the internet has remained free, and it's great, because nobody owns it. Nobody regulates it, but at the same time, they want to have some rules in place, say, don't block your competitors, don't slow down traffic. There are some things you cannot do that are, he says the new rules would use a commercially reasonable test. Like, he says it's not commercially reasonable to break a contract you made with somebody. If somebody's paying for the internet to get a certain speed, you have to give them that certain speed. And but it's unclear whether commercially reasonable would also mean someone can pay extra money for faster speeds, and someone who couldn't afford it might be left behind. So that's the concern that people have there. There's no rules in place. He wants rules up right now. But other members of the commission said, slow down. We have to stop and think about this. Let's wait to make these rules. So
yeah, I would rather take my time and do it right than to hurry up into a bad idea. I guess the other question that I have then is, since the internet is global, how can we then regulate the internet, and how would that affect the rest of the internet?
Yeah, that's a big question. Republicans and Democrats both agree that internet freedom is good. Free speech is awesome. And the UN tried to regulate the internet this past year, and most of the Western world got to, Russia and China wanted to try to regulate it, but then most of the Western world said, no, we're not going to do that. So there is a debate over who can regulate the internet and what they can do. And the U.S. was kind of criticized for having net neutrality rules. That's what Republicans say. They say there should be no regulation at all. But Democrats say you can't trust giant corporations. There has to be some kind of a rule of the road to make sure people don't get taken advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, if you make it the wild, wild west, you know who loses. Everybody at the bottom.
Yeah. There's concerns about that from consumer advocates, but there's also it's not crazy for Republicans to say you can't regulate the internet, because that is a slippery slope where government could play too much of a role. So it's really. Yeah, if you have concerns about this, call the FCC. You have 120 days to weigh in, and they're going to change their draft rules and see what happens.
So what's the argument for it? I mean, other than corporations like Comcast will make a ton of money, what's the argument for doing this? What's Wheeler's argument?
Wheeler's argument is that the Court of Appeals removed the net neutrality rules. So right now there's nothing to stop a company from blocking the traffic of Netflix. Like Comcast, if they hypothetically don't like Netflix, they could block their traffic on their website. And there's no rules in place to stop them from doing that right now. I mean, Comcast has made some speeches about how they'll support the idea of net neutrality, that they won't block content and all that. But the Obama administration really, really wants something on the books to make sure that people don't do that.
You're the expert here. Is it possible to say that it's a utility and regulated as such?
You know, we asked that. We reporters at the meeting, we asked Chairman Wheeler that yesterday, and he said that is a very loaded word, because if it's a utility, that also means that the government has to pay for it. Arguably, if you use that word, like if you use a public,
I think it is a utility. I think we're told that the future of this country and the future of our economy and everything is internet-based, and if that's the case, if the future, my children's future is based on this commodity, this utility, this public, because I think it's a public good, then there should be some special protections in my view.
Yeah. Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web, said this is for everyone. He said this belongs to everyone. So there's a lot of people who say it should be treated like a utility. That there should be some subsidies for it, or there should be a shared responsibility for it at least. But Chairman Wheeler was hesitant to call it a utility because he knew that would mean people would start to say, hey, Chairman Wheeler wants the government to pay for the internet, and he was probably concerned that would be another sign of government overreaching and saying, hey, we own this, so we pay for this, that means we technically own it. And yeah, people say the same thing about the media. I'm a reporter. I want to make sure my business is making money, and a lot of people say you shouldn't take money from the government because that means they technically own you.
Yeah, well, then if you make that argument, you shouldn't be taking money from corporations either, because they own you as well.
Yes, that's why I don't take money from corporations.
Well, technically you do. You work for U.S. News and World Report, right?
I work for just one. Yeah, I know who's paying me, but yeah, that's the concern about why we don't make the internet a utility. A lot of people have said, the internet is important. We should have a shared responsibility for it. But whether we look to the government for protection, or who is going to fund it like a utility is the big question.
Well, boil this down for me, because I just got an email from John who said, how does this affect me? I don't have a website. I don't have a business. I don't do anything other than browse and search the web. How does it affect the average everyday consumer? What does it mean? What does it mean to me? So I'm curious. What does it mean to somebody who doesn't do business on the internet? They may read an article, or they may chat on something, or look at their porn, or whatever it is they do. How does it affect the average person?
Well, if there's corporate interests at play, and they, for some reason, think it's in their interest to block the content of an article, or to block porn because they don't like porn, then they might do that. And you don't have your porn, you don't have your articles. And that's like stifling free speech. That's why net neutrality was a big issue for the Obama administration since he campaigned for president, because he wants to. He sees this. President Obama sees this as a way to maintain free speech online. The government should not regulate it or own it, but there should be a rule of the road, he argues, for there to be free speech, and to make sure that a giant company who owns, like Comcast, who provides internet to a ton of people, that they can't step in and say, I don't like porn, or I don't like articles, I'm going to get rid of them. I'm going to make sure that only what I agree with is read online.
Yeah, I got to tell you, if they took porn off the internet, I'll bet you that they gotten 30 million people into D.C. today for the Operation American Spring.
That's right.
I'll bet you the Clive and Bundy Ranch would have been there in a heartbeat.
It takes something very simple to get people interested like that. That's why there was a lot of protesters outside the FCC yesterday, because people get the internet. They know it's important. So there was a lot of outcry about this. And so the internet affects all of us.
So is there any chance that, you said a federal court overturned it. Is there any chance of this decision being overturned by a higher court? Or is the court part of this done?
Well, Chairman Wheeler wrote these rules in such a way that they would pass scrutiny by the court. He says he's open to everything right now, so nothing is set. There's a rule on the books. The Federal Communications Commission does have authority to regulate phone companies.
Right.
So he said a lot of free speech advocates and consumer advocates say, and the court said you have the authority to do this. So free speech advocates say, just make the internet into a phone company, regulate it that way, use that legal authority. And that got Republicans even angrier, because that's the sign that the government is expanding its regulatory power. And Republicans, by and large, don't like expanding regulation because they see it as a threat to business interests. They want businesses to know what to expect. And that's an option that the FCC might do. A lot of people think that's the clearest legal authority they have. They have authority over phone companies. And if they treat internet companies that way, that would be a way for them to clear this court scrutiny. But they have other options on the table they're still considering.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. I mean, this anti-regulation, look, I'm not a big fan of regulations either, but I do understand that there are some needs for them. We hear an awful lot of the Michelle Bachmans of the world screaming about the job-killing EPA, but I didn't really hear anybody screaming about the people-killing lack of EPA down in West Texas when that fertilizer plant exploded, when it had way more ammonium nitrate than anyone thought they legally were allowed to have. I didn't hear much about that. So when you're talking about regulations, I want sane, rational, level regulations that everybody understands and plays by the same rules. I'm not anti-regulation, but I am in the realm of sane regulation.
Yeah, that's what Democrats argue. They say a lot of Democratic leaders, like Chairman Rockefeller of Chairman Rockefeller in the Senate says net neutrality is very important to the future of the internet because it ensures that everybody has a voice, that whoever has the most money doesn't determine what gets said and who gets to access what content. Small businesses can have a shot against a giant like Google or a giant like Comcast. But a lot of the Democratic leaders were also opposed to this proposal in the FCC because they say leaving the door open to paid prioritization is just as much of a threat because that would just give another way for people with the most money to determine what gets read and what gets heard.
It's going to be interesting to see where this goes. So let me ask you, last question. How do folks go and how do they get to the FCC? How do they make their comments? How do they make their opinions known?
I think the website is www.fcc.gov/comments. They have a comments page online on their fcc.gov website for every motion that is pending for the commission. So you can go online there. And you'll be in good company because I looked yesterday. It has more comments than any other motion. Thousands of them are streaming in there. The commission's got phone calls and letters and online comments. Reach out to the FCC. They have a web www.fcc.gov, and you can find out how to comment on this motion. You'll have 120 days. Yeah, and we've gone to a couple of when they had the traveling FCC chairman come around, and I forget what the reason they came to Harrisburg the last time was for, but it was during the Bush years, and the Bush appointees bailed like halfway through, and just left lines of people with no one to comment to. It was really very, very Bushian. But it'll be interesting to see where this goes. 120 days. I look forward to seeing how this all plays itself out. And as it does, we'd love to have you back and keep us informed on what's going on. Thanks, Rick.
Appreciate the time. Quick break. Right back with your thoughts. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. Time to talk.
Listening to The Rick Smith Show.
It's May 16th, 2014, and time for the world in 2 minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, reporting for Talk Radio News Service at the United Nations in New York. The world's largest election is in the books. More than 550 million Indians voted in the country's nationwide elections, which were held over a period of 5 weeks. In addition to record turnout, this year's campaign marked a change in Indian political history.
This election is being described as the first real presidential-style election.
That was Gur Harpal Singh, Dean of the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London.
The overall process and how it's been conducted, I think, has been quite remarkable. The fact that within a day now, we are almost at the end point of the counting.
India's next Prime Minister will be Narendra Modi. previously the top politician of Gujarat state. He's known for being a master planner, and he may be just the latest Indian leader whose public policy pronouncements far outweigh actual achievements. But Singh says there's a chance Modi could truly shake things up.
The resounding success of Narendra Modi is that in a 6 or 7 week campaign, he's been able to sell a mission, a vision of India, which chimes with the vast majority of young people, and they want to see the pace of economic change accelerating.
And we're less than a month away from the start of the World Cup in Brazil, but much to the frustration of the country's leaders, labor strikes and public protests have broken out across 12 cities this week.
Hey there, fellow working class heroes. I have some great news. You can now get the Rick Smith Show podcast on your iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, or Palm on demand and on the go. Get your class war to go by downloading the Stitcher app on your smartphone by going to Stitcher.com and search for The Rick Smith Show, or go to our website at thericksmithshow.com and click on our Stitcher button. Together we can, and we will, rebuild a prosperous working class and leave opportunity for our children.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME.
The man who sends the investor class diving for their tax shelters. Rick Smith.
At every trough you stop to feed. With your arrogance, your ignorance and greed. Now here come the cuts and redundancy. Through the absolute indifference, the avarice, incompetence, your arrogance, your ignorance, your greed.
I look at this, and I got to be honest. This whole, all of this, to me, it's about money. At the end of the day, it's all about the money and how much that these big companies, these big ISPs, are going to make off of prioritized content. So you got to wonder, is there a shot? Will online radio networks, for instance, where there are a large number of liberal, conservative, outright crazy, will it become, who has the money gets out into the public? Look, I listen to a lot of different podcasts from a number of different political viewpoints, just because I think it's important that you have a wide, well-versed understanding of the other arguments. I don't agree with many of the other arguments, but you got to understand where they're coming from in their positions. Like on the net neutrality thing, look, I fully understand the corporate mentality. We want to control it. I understand the Republican point of it, which is they're anti-regulation. They want business to control everything. They want business to be able to do whatever it wants to do, and you, the consumer, you, the worker, you, the citizen, you be damned. That's the reality in all of this, and it doesn't get any easier than that for you. If you need to take it down to its lowest common denominator, it's the Republican Party and a good number of Democrats. Look, there are a number of corporate Democrats as well that play into this game with their hand into the corporate trough as well. But this view that we need to be business friendly, and that means letting them do whatever they want without regulatory oversight, look, I go back to the West Texas example. That fertilizer plant in Texas had not been inspected by OSHA since 1985. It went boom. Because who would have ever thought? Who would have ever thought, tens of thousands of pounds of ammonium nitrate in wooden boxes, in a wooden building, in the Texas heat without any sprinkler or heat control or cooling or any of that? Who would have ever thought that would have exploded? Who would have ever thunk it? So, when you look at this, it kind of leaves you scratching your head going, who are these politicians like Ted Cruz? Who are these politicians really pandering for? Is it for your vote or is it for the corporate dollars? Because these kind of decisions to me are really all about the dollars. It's all about getting the priority content. It's all about getting the corporate content and what we want you to hear and see. Look, I'm not in favor of there being government control of it either. So don't get that. It should just be open. That's the simple part of this. It should just be. I don't want cops on the beat. I don't want stop signs. I don't want... The great thing to me about the internet is it's a free flow of ideas. And if I don't like what you say, I can respond or I can walk away. When conservatives talk about the free market, the idea of it being free and open and neutral to me is important. I have the right to partake. I have the right to not. I have the right to put something in. I have the right not to. I have the right to abstain. I have the right to ignore it exists. But when I do, the content that I'm seeking should be there within rational bounds. Now, I know there are some who say, well, you're talking about kiddie stuff. No, I think society, everybody agrees that that's something that should be heavily regulated and punished. Although I got to be honest with you, I have looked with a jaundiced eye at some of the allegations of people with kiddie porn on their computers. With all of the things that are going on with hackers being able to hack into my computer or your computer or anybody's computer anywhere around the world, you kind of got to start thinking, I don't know. But in looking at this, for me, I'm uncomfortable with this promise by the chairman. I'm uncomfortable with the promise that there'll be an open and free internet. I'm just uncomfortable with it. And this is where I think there has to be some sane, rational legislating. And this is where Congress has to play a role. And in that, I don't feel all warm and fuzzy. I don't feel very confident in our elected leaders. Just my thought. I'm going to take a quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street.
California, wilting and burning.
A massive oil spill near Glendale overnight.
Oil pipeline bursts in Los Angeles. Plus,
climate change is a present threat to our defense and national security.
Military leaders warn climate change threatens national security. So,
why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green fuel?
Fox News attacks the military.
Of course they do. All of those attacks and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Scientists warn that a large part of Antarctica is melting and cannot be stopped.
Unstoppable melting. It's out of our hands now. I didn't think it would happen, but we finally ran the clock out on the possibility of my personal sacrifice making a difference.
Congratulations. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we have been talking for weeks about the unstoppable heat out here on the West Coast. Today, once again, we are hitting 100 degrees here in Los Angeles. That is not normal for this time of year. Let me connect a few dots. We have an update from the Turkish coal explosion. In our last report, there were hundreds of miners trapped. We now have a tragic update, 282 so far dead there.
Yes, and about 150 still missing as rescue operations continue, but hope is waning for that.
And that all comes from burning fossil fuel, which brings us back out here to California, which is sweltering, wilting, and now on fire.
Yes.
Climate change is happening now, not in the future, right now.
Yep.
Breaking overnight. At least 9 fires now spreading rapidly, erupting one right after another.
Fast-moving wildfires forced residents of Carlsbad, California, a suburb of San Diego, to literally run for their lives.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street. Do not attempt to grab your cars at this moment.
Don't gather your belongings. Don't even take your car. Just grab your loved ones and run.
The evacuations included Legoland, a nuclear power plant, parts of a military base, and untold residences.
20,000 people have been evacuated, dozens of homes destroyed in the San Diego area. At least 9 major wildfires erupted in just the last 24 hours, and this is just as fire officials warned would happen, with record drought happening simultaneously with that record heat wave and unseasonably early Santa Ana winds. On Thursday, San Diego had its highest temperature ever recorded for the entire month of May. California's relentless new wildfire season is shaping up to be the worst ever. 2 months ago, the U.S. Forest Service warned that across-the-board budget cuts brought on by the sequestration, remember that deal struck to avoid a government shutdown? They warned that would severely curtail federal wildfire fighting efforts. Agency officials say they have been forced to hire 500 fewer firefighters and 50 fewer fire engines than last year.
Brilliant.
And did we mention that April 2014 was the second warmest April on record globally?
No, but on Fox News, they told me the globe was cooling. Does that count?
No, it does not. They lie to people. Meanwhile, no, that is not the sound of rain, which would be welcome in Los Angeles. That's the sound of a geyser of crude oil spewing 20 feet high, dumping 10,000 gallons of crude oil in the Los Angeles suburb of Glendale. Half a mile of city streets covered, knee-deep in some places. Fire officials say they are pretty sure it didn't get into the city's water system.
That spill was just minutes away from Brad Blog World News headquarters. Do we have to worry about breathing any of that in?
No, it's too far away for us, but thank goodness none of it caught fire. Climate change is a growing security threat, a threat multiplier, says a new report from a panel of retired U.S. military leaders.
Climate change poses a threat to our military installations, and when these facilities are imperiled, so is troop readiness.
The Center for Naval Analyses Military Advisory Board warns that extreme weather will spark unrest in unstable regions, unravel global networks of trade and resources, impact U.S. coastal military infrastructure, and stretch the U.S. military's readiness to respond to multiple threats. It's vitally important to act now, says retired Brigadier General Gerald Galloway.
Waiting to make the case for action until runways and training areas are underwater or put out of business by extreme events is not the way to go.
The Defense Department has already launched an ambitious research and development program to develop alternative fuels and to be less vulnerable to oil price spikes and supply issues at distant forward operating bases in war zones. So, of course, Fox News attacks the military.
Why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green jet fuel made with algae?
The reason why is because thousands of attacks on fuel convoys in Afghanistan exposed the military's huge vulnerability in relying on oil in hostile territories.
And I'm guessing Fox News never bothered to tell its viewers that the war in Syria is directly related to the 4-year drought in that region that led up to that war. Keep your audience stupid, Fox. You're doing a great job. For much more on that story and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. While you're there, please consider a donation to help support the Green News Report or to help us buy some fans around here. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your sweltering Green News Report.
Exposing GOP half-truths, lies, and hypocrisy every weeknight from 9 to midnight. Rick Smith.
Everything's raising but the wages. Everything's raising but the wages. Gasoline, groceries, and our hazes. Everything's raising but the wages.
Well, the hope is that's changing very soon, especially as we see thousands of people across the country and across the globe out into the streets yesterday, really dwarfing the Operation American Spring that was supposed to happen. Maybe it was called because of rain. Not sure. All I know is the 30 million people who were supposed to show up in Washington, D.C. didn't. I do know that yesterday there were thousands of people out demanding better wages, better hours, conditions, and to me this is the key, and the right to have a voice on the job and be able to join together collectively so that they can bargain better for better wages, hours, and conditions. One of those people out in the streets yesterday I've got on the line. Chris, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thanks for having me back, Rick.
So, in looking at this, was yesterday's event what you expected? Was it more? What did you experience?
I'd say I did not expect it to be as large as it was. We were really loud. Everybody had a sign. We had people walking off the job. We had one girl from the subway across the street. She came out and stood with us for a while, and we had these loud megaphones, and we had this one girl, Lena, and she was going crazy, getting the crowd all, wound up, and we really let them have it. We shut stores down and everything.
That's got to be extremely empowering. I mean, the fact that you were able to do this. I mean, at some point, doesn't this give you a sense of power?
Yeah, it really goes to show you that we are the power that even McDonald's has, or that any of the big corporations have. The people that we work for, they might have the money, but without us, they really don't have any power, because yesterday the power was all ours, and coming together like we did was probably one of the best things I've ever seen in my life.
So what did you experience yesterday? What were the reactions from people that you met on the streets? What does your family think? I'm curious what kind of responses you got out of yesterday.
Well, the biggest misconception was people thought, I had people coming up to me like, you still have a job? Like, aren't you afraid you're going to get fired? And I kind of would just respond to those people like, hey, I know my rights, people would ask me questions, are you allowed to do this? Even at times, we were going through the drive-thru at one of the stores, and after we shut down the drive-thru for a couple of minutes, we went to go back around for a second round, and the police were standing there waiting, and we didn't give them a hard time. We did what they told us. They told us to kind of go the other way, and we cooperated, and there were no problems.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's it's not a matter of breaking the law and all of that. It's a matter of standing together and demanding your right. In no sense being locked up. But what I find interesting is that most people don't realize that still today. I mean, while there's a push to make striking illegal, there's a push to ban picketing. All across the country. A state like Mississippi just passed a law that says you can't boycott or picket a place of employment, which is just bizarre to me. But while we still can, you still have the right to do this.
Yeah, I mean, the whole point behind picketing or boycotting or striking is because something obviously is not right. To tell us that we can't do that, or to tell us that it should be wrong or it's illegal, well, that's just somebody that has a large pocketbook, or somebody that doesn't think people should be allowed to stand up and speak for themselves. And to me, they're the ones that aren't right. They're the ones that are doing something wrong, or at least trying to.
Now, the purpose here, because I had a couple of email people say, well, they just want to cause chaos and they just want to hurt the business. You guys don't want to hurt the company you work for. You don't want to put them out of business. You just want a decent wage, decent standard of living. You just want some respect, right?
Yeah, we want dignity, respect, and we want to be able to feed our children. And you know, that's such a hard thing for me to grasp whenever people say we want to hurt that company. You know, I like going into work and having a hard day's work under my belt, feeling like I accomplished something. I like having the feeling that, you know, I just made my company a lot of money, you know, because I feel like I should be appreciated for that. And working hard is not everybody's issue. Their issue is that they work hard and, you know, they really want to, you know, have a good performance every single day. Yeah, you have your bad days, but they want to have a good performance every single day. And yet, no matter how hard we work, how, you know, often we do it and how consistent we are, you know, they continue to put us down, it seems like, and they don't give us what we're asking for, and they don't care.
It never seems to be quite enough. So let me ask you, you came back to work today. What was the response from management? What was maybe the response from your coworkers who didn't go out on the picket line with you?
Well, the managers, to be honest, kind of had like a hard time even making eye contact today. You know, that was kind of expected. You know, their conversations were real short. Not, you know, it didn't seem like all of them kind of had a problem. I don't really think any of the managers really feel any kind of way about it. There was one employee who was very misinformed, you know, that kind of started to give a little trouble, but it was a very short conversation. It was basically, you know, hey, you could have called off yesterday. You didn't have to throw all the extra work on us, and you could have gave us notice. And I said, you know, excuse me, I know what my rights are. You could have been out there with us. You had every right to do it. You chose not to. You're obviously happy making what you're making, so that's why you stayed. I was out with everybody else fighting for what I believe in.
And the interesting part of this is, while you're out there fighting, I'm sure she would be quite happy to take the benefits that come from you being out in the street fighting, so that there's a better wage, there are better conditions. I'm sure she'd be happy to take those benefits.
I would think so, but, you know, apparently, like I said, it's just misinformation. People, you know, if they don't know something, they're scared of it, it seems like. And, you know, you can try to explain it to them, and you can try to really, you know, present the facts, but at the end of the day, the only way that anyone's ever going to be able to do this is if they go and they see, you know, what's going on for themselves. And a lot of people are blind to it. I really, you know, wish a lot more people would get on board, and it's honestly only a select few people that have a problem with it. A lot of people want to do it, but they're just scared.
And that's where, as the numbers continue to grow, because as I've been talking about, this was, you know, 18 months ago when the first fast food forward strike happened in New York. We talked to some of the people here on the program who participated in that, and I said this could be that spark that you know, it grows and it grows until it's a movement across the country and across the world. And here we are, just 18 months later, and it has sparked 150 cities across this country, 30 countries across the globe, 6 continents. This is only going to grow bigger and bigger as the days, weeks, and months pass.
Right. I agree with you completely. I think that yesterday was honestly just the beginning. You know, 18 months ago, whenever this started in New York, you know, I think that that's an action to applaud, but yesterday was truly, you know, what got this started. And other workers, even at my job, or, you know, other people I've talked to at their places of work, those employees are, you know, already planning on, you know, joining the fight next time, because they said, oh, you know, I should have went out yesterday. I didn't know you were going to show up at work and still have a job today. And it seems to be that misconception that
that education,
you know,
process.
So many people. Yeah.
Yeah, the education process that has to come along with this. Because I truly believe, Chris, that as you and other fast food workers demand better conditions, I believe all of the low wage workforce will eventually demand better wages, which is what scares the hell out of the wealth class of this country and these huge corporate CEOs. The fact that we're finally coming together and not being divided by nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, the margin between the poor and the rich is just so large that I don't understand. You know, I'm not in their shoes, you know, but I feel like anybody that is, you know, at such a level of wealth, you know, you should want to do something good. And doing this for workers, giving them what they're asking for, I've said so many times that it's completely reasonable, and there's no reason why they can't.
Yeah, but Chris, you would just waste if they gave you $15 an hour, you would just waste it on things like food and housing. We can't have that.
Yeah. It's not important for people to be able to feed themselves, but it's important for the wealthy, you know, to save it all in a bank account or invest it in some crazy get-richer plan. It's nonsense to me, Rick.
I'm with you. Let me ask you last line of questioning I've got, because I got to be honest with you. I have the utmost respect for you and all of the people who have the courage and the forethought to say, you know what, we're going to take a stand. So I commend you for that. But do you have any background in this? I mean, is this something that you've done in the past? Is this something that you ever imagined you were going to do? I'm just curious.
Well, no, actually, I've worked in fast food, like I said, all my life, and I've always kind of had the thought that it would be nice to stand up and you know, do this someday, but I never thought somewhere out there, you know, there was an organization, you know, that would really put all this together like they have been, and they did such a great job, you know, just getting in contact with so many people, not just in Pittsburgh, but around the world. And, you know, just the fact that they came to me and they gave me all the facts, they presented, you know, everything to me, and, you know, they didn't hide anything, and they were just being honest. They really wanted to see us do better for ourselves. You know, it was that level of integrity that really drew me to it, and I've never been prouder to stand up for something in my entire life.
Well, I'm proud of you, and I appreciate the work that you do. And as this continues down the road, and I know this will continue, I'd love to have you back on the program so we can keep up with where you're at and where you're going and where the movement's going.
Thanks a lot, Rick, and thanks for having me. I respect you as well.
Thanks so much, Chris. Let's take a quick break. Right back with your thoughts. 1-888-520-RICK. 1-888-520-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show.
Who says the economy is down and that consumers aren't willing to spend in order to stimulate new economic growth? The problem with gloomy economists and skittish policymakers is that they don't know where to look for signs that boom times are back, baby. For example, take auto sales. Yeah, overall they're putzing along at a moderate to low pace, but open your eyes, people. Do you not see that Maserati sales were up 55% last year? Or that Rolls-Royce, Lamborghini, Porsche, and Bentley also produced double-digit increases? Listen to Matt Lavin, a Cleveland high roller who told the New York Times that he bought 3 Mercedes last year, one for $237,000, another for $165,000, and an auxiliary $97,000 number for his wife. Extravagant? It's all a matter of perspective. I look at it as I don't have a boat, Matt explains. There you go. Economics is all about having a positive attitude. So, with a booming stock market, high-tech wealth bubbling like crazy, and Fortune 500 CEOs making big bales of hay while the sun shines, what's not to like about America's economic future? An automotive lifestyle consultant told the Times, luxury is not a dirty word anymore. Now, isn't that a telling insight? You see, when Wall Street crashed 6 years ago, then got bailed out by Washington while the middle class sank, many of your 1%ers and higher got squeamish about living the luxurious life they deserve. But that's not the American way. Hey, if you've got it, flaunt it. This is Jim Hightower saying, surely we can all see the social value of top-end buyers who are willing to step up and make big-ticket purchases again. By leading the consumer charge, these bold luxury buyers are providing a role model that your lower classes need to do their own part in reviving America's economy.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's populist take on what the powers that be are up to. Find out more at hightowerlowdown.org.
The man who sends the investor class diving for their tax shelters. Rick Smith.
Rich pay too much taxes, the poor get way too much. Instead of schools, build prisons and lock the children up. We won't believe those lies again, because God is a Republican.
Oh, yeah. Yep, it hates workers. Big mistake. Big mistake. Made people dependent. And, I got to be honest, while we're talking about poverty programs and while we're talking about the poor, what's interesting to me is, you listen to somebody like Bill Clinton who does all of this really great work around the world with his foundation to combat poverty. And you think about during his presidency, he actually made poverty worse in the country, in my view. That whole welfare reform where we changed the deserving, this idea of the deserving needy, which, I argue actually propped up the low-wage economy. This idea that, you should have to go get a job to get help, just seems to me to be what really propped up this subsidized low-wage economy. The idea that there are some that are deserving poor, and then there are some that are not. And that's really what the conservative welfare reform was, because Clinton signed on to that because he had his arm twisted. Gingrich and the contract to destroy America, and they did a nice job. They've really screwed our social safety net up. But I find it interesting that there's this idea of the deserving poor, and then there's those people who are they're just lazy. And instead of saying, because there used to be a view, and I've had this argued to me a couple of times, and it's something that I've thought of, and it will go, okay, labor, just looking purely from the dismal science of economics, that if you have a segment of the population out of the labor pool, the labor market gets tighter because of a lower number of participants, which raises the cost of labor, your basic supply and demand. And I've made the argument, and you go back to '96 when the welfare reform bill was rammed through. I remember McDonald's workers in my neighborhood in Allentown when I lived there were being paid about $10 an hour. They were well above the minimum wage, which at the time was like $5. They were almost making double the minimum wage because the labor market was so tight, because the economy was doing so well. During the Clinton years, they created a lot of jobs. There was a lot of opportunity, and the wage went up. And this is where, some conservatives have it right. You want to turn this stuff around, create jobs. And I'm with them. I do think government investment has a big part of that, but that's a whole nother argument. As soon as welfare reform was pushed through, as soon as it was heaped upon us, the people working at that McDonald's all disappeared. All of those people that I remember, because look, I used to stop all the time. I worked all kind of crazy hours. I was on call, so I had a 2-hour work call. So I jump out of bed, get the phone call, jump out of bed, rush past the drive-through, and on my way. So I knew all of the drive-through people. As soon as welfare reform happened, all that gone. Those people were all gone, and they brought in minimum wage people, because they were the people who had been pushed off of welfare into these low-paying jobs, and then the subsidies started. And this, in my view, we can have arguments about this, but in my view, this is what started the beginning of this low-wage economy. That, and of course, the destruction of labor unions in the country, which is interesting today. Today's an interesting day in history. 1938, the Supreme Court. Yes, it usually comes back to the Supreme Court, doesn't it? In the Mackey decision, which allowed the permanent replacement of striking workers. And it was something that had not really been used until, August 4th, 1981. Anybody remember what happened on August 4th, 1981? Reagan fired the Patco workers and then permanently replaced them, using the justification of the Mackey decision, and basically the signal across the boardroom that said, go ahead, corporate America, fire at will, break unions, fight organizing, all of this stuff. And labor didn't know how to respond. They had, there had been labor peace, which is what the National Labor Relations Act brought us. During the Depression, there were mass strikes, there were mass sit-down strikes, there were battles, there were wars going on. You think about the Hershey sit-down strike where they brought in thugs from New York to beat workers, and there was chaos in our streets. There was industrial chaos. And in came the National Labor Relations Act. Everyone thinks, oh, it was this wonderful thing that gave workers rights. No, this was to appease labor and management, to say stop all of this chaos in the street, stop ripping this country apart from within. And up until the Reagan years, there were strikes and there were things that went on, but this was the first time government took an active role in saying, you know what? We're going to promote union busting. We're going to promote the race to the bottom. We're going to promote the destruction of the middle class. This is the Reagan legacy. And use the decision that happened today, back in 1938, by the Supreme Court. And you think the Supreme Court doesn't have power? Someone asked me today, would you have voted for Obama again? I go, well, yeah, I would have. I'm not thrilled with him, but with a President McCain, we'd have 2 more insane Supreme Court justices. And the future of this country would be sealed because corporate America would have everything they wanted and a foolproof majority on the court, which is why 2016 is so important. There's the possibility of replacing, over the next 4 or 5 years, a good number of the Supreme Court justices, 3, 4 of them. Do we want more corporatists on the court? Do we want more John Roberts types on the court? Do we want Rick Santorum types? Someone had actually thought Rick Santorum would be a good Supreme Court justice. Yeah. Although, in talking about Rick Santorum, he actually said something recently that I agreed with, which is very, very odd. Evidently, last week he was talking to people at the University of Chicago Institute of Politics. He was asked about Obamacare and the employer mandate to provide health insurance and the mandate for contraception. And, he, after going through his whole abstinence-only nonsense spiel, evidently he said that there shouldn't be a mandate for the contraception. He said, quote, "It would be less objectionable to me for the government to go out and say we're going to pay all of the pharmacies to stock contraception and give them out free." He says, "I'm paying for it indirectly, yes, through my taxes, but I pay a lot of things with my taxes that I don't like." So I got to be honest, I kind of agree with him. Maybe, okay, fine. Let the Hobby Lobby case thing go. Say, fine, you're right. Employers don't have to provide contraception or condoms for that matter either. I mean, while we're at it, we might as well stop the HIV thing too, and hand them out for free as a public good. Maybe I think Tricky Ricky's onto something there. Did you ever think you'd hear Santorum say we should be giving out contraception? What's he got, like 10 kids or something? Maybe some contraception would have helped him. Just a thought. Maybe that's part of it. Look, I've got 3 kids that my wife and I are outnumbered, and they're getting to the age to where they're plotting against us, where they're looking at each other, winking and nodding, because they're going to pull something over mom and dad. I can't imagine having 6 or 10, or I don't know how many kids he's got, but I can't imagine having that many children. I don't like being outnumbered. But it's something I think maybe, just possibly, I could agree with something that Rick Santorum had to say. Anyway, if you missed any portion of the program, thericksmithshow.com. You can get the podcast there. Also, the video while it's up. We make sure that there's an opportunity to watch me flailing my arms around here in the studio. You can also email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I do answer all emails personally. Any thoughts or comments, I'd love to hear it. I'm going to take a quick break, right back with Hour 3. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Till you spend half your life just covering up now. Born in the USA, I was born in the USA, I was born.
The Rick Smith Show, changing America for the better.
It's the Rick Smith Show on Country Gold Radio, WIOO Carlisle and WEEO Shippensburg.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham.
500,000 U.S. steel industry jobs are at risk from surging steel imports, according to a report from the Economic Policy Institute. The new study highlights the threats posed by the flood of imports and excess global steel capacity. United Steelworkers President Leo Gerard says this should be a wake-up call to Congress and the Obama administration. The U.S. steel sector supports up to 500,000 jobs that are at risk of a flood of unfairly priced and traded steel imports, according to Gerard. Gerard says our economic and interests are at risk, and political leaders appear to be sitting on their hands.
15 and a union. We can't survive on 725. 15 and a union. We can't survive on 725. 15.
Like these went up in 150 U.S. cities and in at least 30 other countries Thursday as fast food workers walked off their jobs. The one-day strike action is part of the fast food worker fight for $15 an hour and the right to form a union without employer retaliation. On a Taco Bell strike line in Madison, Wisconsin, single mom and Arby's striker Amanda Keller said organizing is the best hope for fast food workers looking for higher wages and improved working conditions. She says her co-workers are paying attention to this movement.
Yeah, we have talked about it, and it's, you know, they're saying it's a great idea to start joining and see how much our managers and our CEOs really need us. But they don't realize it until, you know, we leave the store. It's really hard for us, and we have to rely on the state for food stamps and for health care and for what else we need.
Chop, chop from the top. Make the bosses take the losses. Chop, chop from the top. Make the bosses take the losses.
Seattle's 15 Now coalition launched its petition drive Thursday to put a $15 an hour minimum wage on Seattle's ballot. Socialist Seattle City Council member Kshama Sawant was the first to sign the petition outside of McDonald's. Low-wage workers and their supporters want a real $15 an hour minimum wage in Seattle with a shorter phase-in period than the mayor's plan and no tip or health care penalties. The Illinois law cutting pensions for public employees is on hold, blocked by a court order as a result of lawsuits brought by workers and their unions. Labor went to court because cutting public worker pensions is against the Illinois state constitution. The law was to have taken effect June 1st. The We Are One Illinois Labor Coalition cheered the judge's order. Illinois AFL-CIO President Michael Kerrigan says the ruling is an important first step in efforts to overturn an unconstitutional law and to protect retirement security for working people in Illinois.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
But the morning feels so bad. Everybody seems to agree. Coming Tuesday, I feel better. Even my old man looks good. This Wednesday's go so slow. Thursday, I don't know. I got body on my mind.
Yes, Friday on my mind, absolutely. And look, as I found out, the president is under arrest on the way back to the Bundy Ranch to be deposed and debriefed and, well, defrocked and you everything, because they've got him evidently. At least if you look at the Insaniacs on Twitter, because today was Operation American Spring, and pictures everywhere of that one guy walking around. There were supposed to be 30 million people, and my first thought was from some of my friends in D.C. who said, you know, traffic was a little light today. I go, well, public transportation really is very good in D.C. Those 30 million revolutionaries, they must have got caught at the machine trying to put money in it. Something. But 30 million people didn't show up today. So Any surprise? Probably not, which is why we've asked our good friend Terrence Heath from the Campaign for America's Future to come talk to us on Wingnut Friday Review. Terrence, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me.
So I understand from the Twitters that Obama is now on his way to the Cliven Bundy Ranch.
Well, I haven't been on Twitter for the better part of the afternoon, but last I checked, everything was still intact. They were supposed to round up, I think, Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and a couple of other people. As far as I know, those people are all still on the job. So if there was some kind of revolutionary coup, I missed it.
30 million people, and some of the reasons, I got to be honest, some of the reasons why the 30 million people didn't show up were just beautiful. That as people were coming into the city, Obama was having them arrested. Like, look, we lock up a lot of people in this country, Terrence. I don't know that we could lock up 30 million of them.
We don't have anywhere to put 30 million people without somebody noticing. I'm sorry. and despite what you think about public transportation, it's very good, but I don't think 30 million people could make it in on the metro. I don't think 10 million people could necessarily make it in on the metro all at once. So.
Well, as I had joked this morning, maybe what happened is they couldn't figure out, because it's you actually have to figure out how to put money into the machine to get your ticket out. Maybe they just couldn't figure that out. They don't have that out on the ranch. So, actually just figuring out that very simple process of getting your ticket, maybe just too much. Either that or the belt buckle wouldn't go through the metal detector.
I don't know. But there's always the excuse that I'm sure they will give if they have not already. At some point, someone will say that Operation American Spring was actually a false flag.
That's another one.
Planted by the Obama administration to discredit American patriots.
Yeah.
Did I get it about right?
You hit it right on the button. And as one of my friends said to me, he goes, "This is because there's some of my friends on the left who believe this is a right-wing false flag because they want to take away the real American Spring, which I think has to happen, where working people say, you know what, we've been getting screwed on the job for so long, we're going to take to the streets." Isn't it interesting that it's the next day after in 150 cities across this country, you had low-wage workers striking in the streets?
Right. And that's the real movement in America. That's, if you ask me, the real patriot movement in America right now is for livable wages and jobs and infrastructure and all the things that we need to make this country run. I think the folks like on Bundy's Ranch and the American Spring have these, I don't know, Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome fantasies of living in some kind of anarchic city-state system in which they would probably all last about 2 weeks. But the overwhelming majority of Americans know better than that.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying, especially the pictures, where you see the Duck Dynasty looking people who have now taken to that's their identity now. They're going to imitate a couple of people they saw on TV, and they're going to hold guns and take pictures of each other. And I'm going, really? Is that the best thing you could think of doing today?
Right.
Don't you have anything better to do, like, I don't know, a job?
Right, and the same could be said of the patriots down on Bundy's Ranch. After a month or so away from whatever jobs and families they have, they're broke and now asking for money to continue their extended vacation.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's tough being, I hate to call them patriots because what they're doing is anything but patriotic.
Anything but patriotic.
It really defiles the word patriot.
What it is criminal, really. That's what it boils down to. And at some point, someone somewhere is going to have to get called on it. The FBI is already investigating the standoff where several people pointed guns at federal officers, which, by the way, is a crime that carries a maximum prison sentence of 20 years.
Nice.
And they're not kidding. They have said, the FBI local and state governments have said there are going to be consequences for those individuals.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, I remember the day that it happened. I said, you cannot let this go unchecked. And as they walked away, I said it was the right decision not to get into a gun battle right there. But you can't let this go unchecked where you've got federal agents who are just trying to do their job.
You cannot let it stand.
Having people in sniper perches looking down on them. I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable with that.
Right, neither am I. But at the same time, you don't want to give them what it is that they want.
Exactly.
They want another Ruby Ridge. They want another Waco. And it's part of the same movement that the American Spring is part of the sovereign movement that that sincerely, honestly, truly believes that the overwhelming majority of American people support the same ideals that they support and believe the same things that they do, and all they need is some event that will ignite the outrage that they believe is brewing out there. And what's happening, I think, is that people are getting more and more outraged at them.
And I got to be honest, when that happened, there's part of me that goes, if you want to be a martyr, okay. If I were president, there was part of me that goes, you know what? If that's what they want. If they claim that, my favorite tweet was, Obama's going to send drones after us. I'm going, okay, on the subway, sure, why not?
He sent they sent Navy SEALs after Osama bin Laden. They weren't afraid to go after him mano a mano. I don't think they're going to shy away from these guys.
Yeah, you mean Billy Joe Bob with his keg belly and his six gun on the side? That's not a big fear, you don't think?
No. I mean, honestly, if you think that all of that is going to stand up against the full might of the U.S. government and the U.S. military, feel free. Go right ahead. But I honestly hope that it doesn't come to that, because there'll be a lot of people, probably a lot of officers' families that will be without their loved ones as a result. And I think that's what the Bureau of Land Management is trying to avoid. But you can't let it stand that you can point your loaded weapon at a federal officer and still be just walking around.
No.
It goes against the very idea of order.
The rule of law. I mean,
the rule of law, really.
Look, and Bundy's the last guy I think you're the one to stand up for. I mean, a guy who really, I mean, there are people that you take a stand for. This isn't one of them.
No. I mean, this is the guy that you smile and nod and move away from as he's talking to you, because you're realizing just how deep the crazy goes here. I mean, his whole so-called protest is based on a myth of his ancestral rights to ground that his family hasn't owned as long as the Bureau of Land Management has been around.
Yeah,
so I mean, but facts don't necessarily matter in this case.
It's good narrative. I mean, it's good to get people lathered up.
Mm-hmm.
What I loved is one of the organizers of the big 30 million person protest today actually said, well, you don't actually have to come here. You can just take a sign and sit in your front yard.
Right, because there's no way we can count all those people, so they can claim as many people as they want.
Yeah, it's nuts. And what's going on is the more of this you see, the crazier more emboldened and crazier these folks seem to become. And at some point, don't we in media, and don't we as rational human beings have to just kind of look at them and just pat them on the head and go and ignore them? I mean, we've spent now, like 9 minutes talking about this thing that didn't happen.
Right.
At some point, that we just ignore the crazy person. The guy who's talking to himself, you just let him be. He's not harming anybody.
I don't know if we can completely ignore them, because one of the interesting things about the American Spring is that they were also holding an event simultaneously, supposedly, at Bundy's ranch in Nevada. There's a direct link between the people like the American Spring and the people on Bundy's ranch, like the whole sovereign movement that believes if they can just make something happen, then the rest of the country will rally behind them. So you have clearly paranoid, extremist, delusional people, heavily armed, looking for a fight. I don't know if they can be ignored, but the only way that they should be taken seriously is as a threat to public safety.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Terrence, because this came up to one of my gun nut friends, and I said, let me ask you this: what if a group of workers, the fast food workers, let's say, decided to show up in front of McDonald's armed to the teeth with Mac 90s and with AR-15s and all of this stuff, brandishing these weapons with their Donald Duck beards and their dirty T-shirts? What do you think would happen in that? How crazy would the conservatives go? How nuts do you think it would be?
Most of those people are going to be African American and Latino working class people of color. And I wrote a few weeks ago that if the militiamen at Bundy's Ranch or in Nevada right now were African American or Latino and wearing hoodies instead of cowboy hats and duck beards and what have you, they would not be called patriots. No one would be calling them patriots.
They'd be called thugs and hooligans.
They'd be called thugs. They'd be called a gang of thugs. And that's what these people are, really. And at some point, it's going to probably end, unfortunately, in some degree of violence. I mean, people in Bunkersville are already having to deal with these people assuming police powers.
Yeah, stopping people. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine this driving down the road, going to a checkpoint by a couple of yahoos who have no authority whatsoever, other than that they have a gun? Right.
Just some guy who decides that because he has a gun, he has a right to stop you and detain you and question you and demand some stuff of you before you can go on your way.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that a crime in and of itself?
And yet claim to be protecting liberty. Living under the gaze of an armed militia, I don't think is anybody's idea of liberty. Especially since these guys are so unbalanced that they're willing to turn their guns on each other. They damn near shot each other.
Well, they should have. I'm a big fan of that. That's called thinning the herd.
I mean, you've heard of a circular firing squad. That's literally what almost happened there. And so you've got people who are clearly, for lack of a better word, unbalanced and well armed. I wouldn't want them in my community, and I'm sure nobody else would want them in theirs either, because eventually it gets to a point where instead of having the rule of law, you have the rule of the guys with the most guns.
Yeah, you have anarchy. But here's the thing. You were talking about the hoodies and all of that stuff. Shouldn't the lesson for African Americans be wearing big hats and belt buckles? And duck beards? Shouldn't that be the answer then?
I always have I've had this fantasy for a long time of getting maybe 2 busloads of well-dressed African American men in suits and ties, just going out somewhere out west to a gun show, and very quietly going in and legally buying a bunch of guns, and then without a word just getting back on the bus and leaving, and then wait to see what would happen. Wait to see if it would end up in the news.
That would be a funny experiment.
And I would love to see the reaction, the response to that. I mean, I'm sure at least some people on the right on Fox News would probably start freaking out.
I mean, because I remember, on election day, Fox News was going crazy because a black guy opened the door for an elderly lady. Actually made the Black Panther Party is going to open. They're opening a door.
Right.
Like I thought he was going to take a club and bludgeon the woman to death.
Right.
He was
exactly.
Just being nice and opening a door.
Exactly. These were the same people who were frightened of a group of African Americans lining up to vote in numbers.
It's crazy. Let's move along to some of the other craziness. I see the Turd Blossom's got another gem. Evidently, Hillary Clinton's now brain damaged. I didn't think she had a concussion. I thought they said there was. She made this up. Now she's brain damaged. Which is it?
I don't know. But I think probably privately, Bill and Hillary Clinton probably had a good laugh over it, especially coming from the guy, as Nancy Pelosi pointed out, or maybe it wasn't. No, it wasn't Nancy Pelosi. It was the White House spokesperson who pointed out this is the guy who was almost literally the last American to figure out who won the election. So, as Nancy Pelosi said, maybe he's projecting some of his weaknesses onto Hillary Clinton. It smacks of desperation, and this early in things is a little, I don't know, a little worrisome. That this is what you got to throw at someone by now. That's the bottom of the barrel kind of tactic, if you ask me.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that she's faking, but now completely just can't even function. That's just amazing to me. And also,
anyone who knows anything about Hillary Clinton knows that she has, for the longest time, probably been one of the smartest people in Washington. I mean,
some would argue if she was, she wouldn't be there.
Well, there's that.
And another one of those moments that just crazy wingnut moment. Alan West, is he actually trying to say that Obama orchestrated the taking of these 300 girls, or that what's the?
I think so, but it's hard to say what Alan West is thinking at any given moment because I don't know. It involves Alan West thinking. And there are at least a dozen things. This is just the latest that conservatives have claimed the Obama administration is using or orchestrating or somehow behind in order to distract attention away from Benghazi. They actually believe that if none of these other things were happening, the American people would be focused like a laser beam on Benghazi.
Well, they need that distraction. They need the shiny thing in the room. And then, look, they got to have what they got to have. And finally, is there really something that I can agree with Rick Santorum on?
I'm still scratching my head about that. I'm thinking, I don't even know what to think because I'm thinking, well, yeah, that sounds like a good idea to me. I'd be behind that.
So he's an advocate of saying, okay, businesses aren't going to be mandated to provide reproductive health care, contraception through their insurance plans, so no employer mandate. But Rick Santorum is saying that the government should just buy up a stockpile of contraception and give them out.
So now taxpayers are paying for contraception. I'm thinking, wait, wasn't that the whole thing that you were against?
Yeah, it's very.
But I think
weird.
that there are some people on the right who are worried about what actually it could mean if the Hobby Lobby people won in the Supreme Court, because there are myriad ways that could wreak havoc for corporations.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who would have a lot of fun making that happen.
And Santorum would probably be one of them. But I got to be honest, I'm actually in favor of something that Santorum has come up with. I think it should be accessible to everyone, because after all, we should be making. If you're against abortion, the number one thing you should be in favor of is contraception.
I mean, it seems like a no-brainer.
It just does.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat. I mean, it seems like, well, yeah, that would be a really good idea. Why don't we do that?
It makes sense, Terrence. It makes sense.
I mean,
the reason we don't do a lot of things.
And not just birth control pills, but condoms too. Because, hey, why don't we tackle the STD rate while we're at it?
Wow, look at you. You should run for office. You ever think of that?
You couldn't pay me enough.
All right, Terrence, I appreciate your time, man. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Our good friend Terrence Heath, Campaign for America's Future. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Bringing sanity and rational thought back to America. Rick Smith.
On July 5th, 1935, the National Labor Relations Act was signed into law. It is also known as the Wagner Act after its chief sponsor, New York Senator Robert Wagner. Prior to its passage, Senator Wagner chaired the National Labor Board, created by Franklin Roosevelt in 1933 to attempt to bring order to labor management relations. The National Labor Board consisted of 3 representatives from labor and 3 from industry, with Wagner as the chairman. It was here that Senator Wagner realized government assistance was required to level the playing field if labor unions were to effectively bargain with management. President Roosevelt said of the National Labor Relations Act, it should serve as an important step toward the achievement of just and peaceful labor relations in industry. Hailed as the Magna Carta of labor, once the National Labor Relations Act was signed into law, workers were encouraged and protected to exercise their newly recognized rights to freedom of association, self-organization, and engage in concerted activities for the purpose of collectively bargaining through a representative of their own choosing in order to establish wages, hours, and conditions. Employer interference, such as threats and intimidation, firing, refusing to negotiate with the union, and discrimination for union activity were expressly prohibited. These illegal activities are described as unfair labor practices by the law. The impact of the Wagner Act on American life was substantial. The standard of living for American workers, their families, and communities was extraordinary. Unionization rates increased to a high of 35% of the American workforce as American workers demanded their rights. Working men and women finally had a unified voice to stand up and fight for dignity, respect, and safety in their workplace. This Rick Smith Show Labor History Moment was made possible by a grant from the Labor Education Center at IUP. For more information, visit www.thericksmithshow.com.
Hey there, fellow working class heroes. I have some great news. You can now get the Rick Smith Show podcast on your iPhone, Android, BlackBerry, or Palm on demand and on the go. Get your class war to go by downloading the Stitcher app on your smartphone by going to Stitcher.com and search for The Rick Smith Show, or go to our website at TheRickSmithShow.com and click on our Stitcher button. Together we can, and we will, rebuild a prosperous working class and leave opportunity for our children.
The most important issues of the day. This is The Rick Smith Show.
Well, as I said earlier, Obama's been taken to the Cliven Bundy Ranch. At least that's what Twitter told me earlier today, that Obama was pulled out of the White House, kicking and screaming and crying and confessing as the Operation American Spring, the militia leaders took control of the nation, and, well, all 6 of them. Wow. And what's amazing to me is I spent all this time talking about it. I guess who's the fault? Whose fault is it for hyping this stuff up? Anyway, let's find out what's really going on around the world. I got Ellen Ratner, Talk Radio News Service. Ellen, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I guess they didn't get enough people there.
Yeah, there were only, 29,999,994 short?
Yes.
I guess they couldn't get change for the subway.
I guess not.
And, what's interesting is I look at this, and I've been wondering aloud, what would have happened had, labor groups said, you know what, we're going to show up, like yesterday with all the fast food workers who were in the streets. If they said, we're going to show up with guns, and we're going to take the CEOs out, and we're going to take them to some undisclosed location, I wonder what would happen in this country.
Well, maybe somebody would pay some attention to that, right?
I think they would come out with the National Guard. I think they would protect the CEO class with everything they could possibly come out with. Don't you think?
It depends which CEOs they were.
Especially if you're talking about a boatload of minorities and women packing heat in the middle of the street. Old white guys with big hats and belt buckles, they seem to be okay and get the pass. But I got to wonder about everybody else.
Well, we'll see. I don't see it happening in any fast order. I mean, there are people there's a majority right now that think Benghazi's okay.
Yeah, well,
I mean, that's scary.
Yeah, but I look at the premise of this whole, and what scares me, honestly, the whole premise of this American spring that these folks wanted was to make our country destabilized, to tear down institution, to destroy, what sanity there is left, if there is any, in some twisted way. The premise kind of throws me.
Well, I guess it's an issue of they're crazy.
It's that simple.
I mean, honestly, who cares? They're nuts. And obviously, they don't have much of a following.
Yeah, well, but the one guy did say, the guy said,
there's that woman that, I forget her name, but she went on a hunger protest in front of the White House to protest, fishing or whatever. And, I mean, I just said to her, you're wasting your energy because nobody's going to pay attention. You've got to get to the opinion makers. And instead of starving yourself to death, spend some time trying to get to the opinion makers.
Yeah. But it's much more fun to be crazy. I got to be honest. I watch these people, and it looks like they're having fun.
Well, they have nothing else to do. I once saw a guy in front of the White House, Rick, honest to gosh, and he was doing some kind of protest, and it was a lefty protest, something you and I would probably agree with, and lefty liberal, and, he said, and we are going to give this petition to the White House, and he had some, somebody with a video camera, doing it, and I just said, this guy's just trying to raise money.
Yeah. And isn't that what most of this really is? It's all about, because it's all of these people who have radio programs or internet sites. It seems to all about just driving traffic. And I often wonder, because I've met Alex Jones a couple of times, and I got to wonder if he's actually as crazy as he appears. Because in my conversations with him, he didn't seem all that crazy. He actually seemed like a very shrewd businessman playing to these people.
That's probably what he is.
Well,
right?
There you go.
I mean, he knows how to segment his market. He's done that, and he's making money on what he does.
But at some point, poking the stick at the beehive, lathering all of these simpletons up, isn't that at some point dangerous?
Yeah.
Okay. That was simple. Got right to the point.
It is dangerous, but again, they're kind of nuts.
Because I was reading some of the tweets earlier of now Glenn Beck isn't insane enough, and you go, really? Did we pass that threshold that Glenn Beck isn't far enough to the crazy side that they're calling him treasonous and a traitor as well? They're lumping him with Obama. I'm going, wow, that was quick.
Well, there are some people that are so insane. We just laugh. That they get this hate mail at Fox, and I mean, I get such hate mail, and we just laugh at these people.
Yeah.
It's like, don't you have anything better to do with your time?
No, we're down on the ranch.
It's really like, don't you want to read a book?
No. And if we do, it's going to be Rush Revere.
Yeah, well, what can I say?
And
there you have it.
And there's a problem there. So let's move along. Let's find out what's going on around the world. I guess the statement by the Secretary General on Syria.
Yes. So the Secretary General is none too happy with what's going on in Syria, to say the least. And that makes a lot of sense. They're very worried about water supplies in Aleppo. They said that they were cut off for 8 days. 2.5 million people did not have that, and did not have water. And basically, what they're saying is they are purposely trying to deny a fundamental human right. Very worrisome, actually.
Yeah, and then all the disease and all of the dehydration, and then all of the all the stuff that comes along with that. Not good stuff.
Definitely not good stuff.
So what's he going to do about it?
Well, I mean, that's it. The United Nations is kind of powerless. I wish they had some. One of the things we're trying to do is trying to get that woman out from Sudan who's a physician. But they they consider her an apostate, and they've sentenced her to hanging for it.
It's
Crazy,
nuts.
huh?
It's nuts what's going on around the world, especially when you're talking about. I had hoped at some point we would get past this hanging women and shooting them and wearing the hood stuff and all of that. At some point, I had hoped in my lifetime maybe you get past that. It looks like we're not.
You know, I don't know. I go back to the old Beatles, "Imagine no religion" to some respects.
Yeah. Yeah. Every day I talk about some crazy religious guy who's done something really insane that it surprises the heck out of me that anyone would listen to. Yet they have a following, and it's wow.
There was some, and I bet you some of those people think we're insane.
Yeah, no, I understand that they do. I have a couple of way out hyper religious friends who, they tell me I'm going to burn and all of this stuff while they're doing some of the most heinous things that you can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, people think that they're right, and you wonder how are these people raised?
Maybe they were dropped on their head. That's what I asked my one friend. Were you dropped repeatedly? Did they use your head for a basketball? And maybe so.
And they're really worried that you're not going to be saved.
Yeah, well, don't worry about me. As my grandfather always said, don't worry about me. Worry about yourself. You've got enough to worry about with you. I'll be just fine. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
So what's going on in India? There's
well, in fact, you know what's fascinating about India is that it is the world's largest democracy, and they just had an election, 550 million votes over 5 weeks, and the
Did they have
winner
IDs? Did they all have IDs?
I don't think so. The winner is the governor of one of the states in western India, and he is very much a liberal and has a lot of public projects in his mind. So we'll see.
That's a good thing, right?
It's a very good thing. A lot of infrastructure kinds of things.
So people working and economy and stuff like that. Not bad, right?
Exactly.
550 million people voted. What do they got, like 20 billion people there?
I think they have 1.3 or 1.4. It rivals China.
Wow, so that's a lot better voting participation than I guess we get, right?
They do, yes. And but then you have a place like Australia where there is so much not voting that that they have to make it a law that you have to vote.
Wow. I don't know that I want it to be a law that you have to vote, because there are a lot of people I wish that wouldn't.
Well, I think people were so apathetic that nobody voted.
Because there's part of me that looks at poll testing, and not based on race, but just based on ignorance. I mean, I know some people who you talk to them and they're just completely all over the map without any real idea of what it is they're talking about. I guess you could make the argument that I don't know what I'm talking about either. So.
Oh, I won't make that argument, because I actually think you do know what you're talking about. But I agree with you. There are very few people, in some respects, that do know what they're talking about.
I fear that it's just turned into a popularity contest, because we're turning it into like American Idol, and maybe at some point we'll have just television voting.
Well, maybe we'd be better off sometimes instead of who we have in Congress with American Idol.
That's a good point. And we may have one. Isn't one of the guys Clay Aiken?
There is. You're right. The guy that the other guy died or something.
He took a trip, and I think Aiken pushed him off the ladder. I shouldn't say that. That's just me being facetious. But the guy fell off. I guess fell and died, and that's pretty horrible for him. But now Clay Aiken's the Democrat running against, and I forget what her name is off the top of my head, Elmers or something like that.
I haven't followed that race really, except that one last thing.
Yeah. Tomorrow, the big day, the 60th anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education. Separate but equal, gone. And that's true. It's long gone. Because you look at the inner city schools, definitely not equal.
Definitely not equal. And what is interesting, though, about Brown versus Board of Education is that Massachusetts actually made gay marriage legal on that day 10 years ago.
And why did they pick that day? Why the significance?
They picked it because of Brown versus Board of Education.
All right. Because of the separate but equal thing? Because that was really the basis of the whole decision, was that you can't claim, we're going to divide people up and say, oh, you'll have the same things when you actually don't.
Exactly right.
I guess I can see that marriage would be one of those things that you call it. I know a lot of people want to call it civil unions or whatever. I really don't care what you call it.
Well, the point is you don't want to have anybody in society less than somebody else.
Exactly.
That breeds a lot of anger.
And I'm with you. And at some point, I hope we get past it and move along, because I think we got other big problems too. Like
wouldn't that be nice?
People with jobs.
Right.
And stopping crazy people. One of my favorite tweets was the reason that the 30 million people didn't show up is Obama was arresting them as they were coming into D.C.
They weren't really saying that.
Yes, they were. The prison industrial complex would be just they would be warm and fuzzy all over.
That's hilarious.
And finally, if I wanted to invest in marijuana, if I wanted to be a pot investor, the SEC's warning me.
The FEC is warning you. Yes, they're very concerned about people investing their money. They say that they're fraudsters, that they have less information about these investments, etc. I actually have a friend who owns the medical marijuana patent in Britain and has owned it for about 20 years.
How do you own a medical marijuana patent? How do you own that? And how do I get a piece of it?
I used to own something called you can look it up. It doesn't own it anymore. Called the Ohio Hempery, as in hemp. And he used to make hemp clothing and all this kind of stuff. He's quite a character.
Yeah, at some point, maybe here in Pennsylvania, we'll come out of the dark ages and start using it, at least on the medical side of it. Personally, I think it should be legal. It should be decriminalized at the minimum. I'm a little leery on the legalization. On the next to the Tic Tacs.
There's a difference between legalization and decriminalization.
Right, and that's where my distinction is, and I've been told it's too nuanced a position. I don't think you should go to jail for it, but I don't want it on the shelf next to the Tic Tacs.
I agree with you.
That's pretty much where it is.
We agree.
Ellen, I appreciate you taking time for us.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
You do as well. Ellen Ratner, Talk Radio News Service. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show. Most important issues of the day. This is the Rick.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street.
California, wilting and burning.
A massive oil spill near Glendale overnight.
Oil pipeline bursts in Los Angeles. Plus,
climate change is a present threat to our defense and national security.
Military leaders warn climate change threatens national security. So,
why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green fuel?
Fox News attacks the military.
Of course they do. All of those attacks and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Scientists warn that a large part of Antarctica is melting and cannot be stopped.
Unstoppable melting. It's out of our hands now. I didn't think it would happen, but we finally ran the clock out on the possibility of my personal sacrifice making a difference.
Congratulations. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we have been talking for weeks about the unstoppable heat out here on the West Coast. Today, once again, we are hitting 100 degrees here in Los Angeles. That is not normal for this time of year. Let me connect a few dots. We have an update from the Turkish coal explosion. In our last report, there were hundreds of miners trapped. We now have a tragic update, 282 so far dead there.
Yes, and about 150 still missing as rescue operations continue, but hope is waning for that.
And that all comes from burning fossil fuel, which brings us back out here to California, which is sweltering, wilting, and now on fire.
Yes.
Climate change is happening now, not in the future, right now.
Yep.
Breaking overnight. At least 9 fires now spreading rapidly, erupting one right after another.
Fast-moving wildfires forced residents of Carlsbad, California, a suburb of San Diego, to literally run for their lives.
Evacuate your house and run to the closest street. Do not attempt to grab your cars at this moment.
Don't gather your belongings. Don't even take your car. Just grab your loved ones and run.
The evacuations included Legoland, a nuclear power plant, parts of a military base, and untold residences.
20,000 people have been evacuated, dozens of homes destroyed in the San Diego area. At least 9 major wildfires erupted in just the last 24 hours, and this is just as fire officials warned would happen, with record drought happening simultaneously with that record heat wave and unseasonably early Santa Ana winds. On Thursday, San Diego had its highest temperature ever recorded for the entire month of May. California's relentless new wildfire season is shaping up to be the worst ever. 2 months ago, the U.S. Forest Service warned that across-the-board budget cuts brought on by the sequestration, remember that deal struck to avoid a government shutdown? They warned that would severely curtail federal wildfire fighting efforts. Agency officials say they have been forced to hire 500 fewer firefighters and 50 fewer fire engines than last year.
Brilliant.
And did we mention that April 2014 was the second warmest April on record globally?
No, but on Fox News, they told me the globe was cooling. Does that count?
No, it does not. They lie to people. Meanwhile, no, that is not the sound of rain, which would be welcome in Los Angeles. That's the sound of a geyser of crude oil spewing 20 feet high, dumping 10,000 gallons of crude oil in the Los Angeles suburb of Glendale. Half a mile of city streets covered knee-deep in some places. Fire officials say they were pretty sure it didn't get into the city's water system.
That spill was just minutes away from Brad Blog World News headquarters. Do we have to worry about breathing any of that in?
No, it's too far away for us, but thank goodness none of it caught fire. Climate change is a growing security threat, a threat multiplier, says a new report from a panel of retired U.S. military leaders.
Climate change poses a threat to our military installations, and when these facilities are imperiled, so is troop readiness.
The Center for Naval Analyses Military Advisory Board warns that extreme weather will spark unrest in unstable regions, unravel global networks of trade and resources, impact U.S. coastal military infrastructure, and stretch the U.S. military's readiness to respond to multiple threats. It's vitally important to act now, says retired Brigadier General Gerald Galloway.
Waiting to make the case for action until runways and training areas are underwater or put out of business by extreme events is not the way to go.
The Defense Department has already launched an ambitious research and development program to develop alternative fuels and to be less vulnerable to oil price spikes and supply issues at distant forward operating bases in war zones. So, of course, Fox News attacks the military.
Why is the Department of Defense splurging on things like green jet fuel made with algae?
The reason why is because thousands of attacks on fuel convoys in Afghanistan exposed the military's huge vulnerability in relying on oil in hostile territories.
And I'm guessing Fox News never bothered to tell its viewers that the war in Syria is directly related to the 4-year drought in that region that led up to that war. Keep your audience stupid, Fox. You're doing a great job. For much more on that story and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. While you're there, consider a donation to help support the Green News Report or to help us buy some fans around here. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your sweltering Green News Report.
Demanding the super rich to pay their fair share for once. The Rick Smith Show.
I got a bad case, I'm turning it up, it's getting cold in here, so fire it up. I got a bad case, I'm turning it up, it's getting cold in here, so somebody fire it up.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, Rick, at thericksmithshow.com. Bloomberg News reporting that China, who is the world's largest carbon emitter, They plan to speed up their solar power development. Unlike us, who seems to be going in the other direction, they are targeting, according to Bloomberg, a more than tripling of installed capacity to 70 gigawatts by 2017 so that they can cut their reliance on coal and maybe they can breathe. Just a thought. You've seen some of the pictures of people riding around on their bicycles with face masks on. Kind of makes you wonder. The goal would be double, according to Bloomberg, a previous target set for 2015. According to a statement posted today by the National Development and Reform Commission, China also plans to have 150 gigawatts of installed wind power by 2017, 11 gigawatts of biomass power, and 330 gigawatts of hydropower. They say the plan comes as the nation strives to get 13% of the energy it consumes from non-fossil fuels. 13%. Now, you combine that, you compare that to the what's going on in Germany, which just the other day the big report was that on Sunday, Germany had generated 74% of its energy from renewables. And as we've talked about on the program in the past, Germany, I think, smart policy, turned billboards into solar panels, paid people to put solar panels on their homes with a very generous plan. And look, this takes actual thought. And, heaven forbid we have some of that. Here in Pennsylvania, where the solar industry has been destroyed because, well, we've got a governor who's got his hand down the drilling hole. Think about this. And, I guess it comes back to this idea that we need to be paying our corporate masters. When I put the solar panels on my house, for instance, the SREC credits, the solar renewable energy credits, were somewhere in the $220 range. Almost immediately. And look, this is one of those things where I'm sure the industry knew, but the average consumer didn't, that the state law was about to tank. There's a gap in Pennsylvania's law that mandates a certain percentage of the renewable energy in the portfolios of the energy companies, that there's a certain amount that they have to buy from renewable. So when they created all this increased capacity through the stimulus money that Obama put out, through the Sunshine Fund that the state had, they created this massive surplus of what they were demanding that the energy companies use. And what you created, obviously, was a massive supply, and did not make the demand part of it. So what happened is the energy credits tanked. They're down to about, I think, $40 now is where they're at. They had been $10 and $12 for 2 years. Now, I understand here, and I think it's 2016, then there's a jump, but they wouldn't fix the gap between it, so they killed the solar industry in this state. And it comes back to this idea of having smart policy, smart ideas, which I often wonder if we could. Now, you go back and you think about our history. You think about the Manhattan Project. You think about the Marshall Plan. You think about the race to the moon. You think about these really big things, curing polio. You think about these really, fighting World War II. You think about these huge endeavors as a nation. We came together, and you wonder if it's possible today. This idea that all there is, and we're sold that nonsense a lot, that there's no alternative, the Teenan mentality. No, there's no alternative. This is all we have. And when we went into Blair, West Virginia, and those coal miners who came out with their sidearms to scare the outsiders off, because we want to destroy their coal, which is ludicrous. But they've been sold. It's all you've got, and they want to take away what the only thing that you have. And the same is the same for fossil fuels. Look, at the end of the day, I think I would rather live 10 years longer and figure out how we're going to create an economy that works for everybody. And that's a conversation that seriously has to be had. But I look at these other countries, and I mean, Germany has been doing this for some time. Germany has been saying, we need to be energy independent in a real way. Now, here in the U.S., all we keep hearing about is, well, we need to be energy independent. We need to drill, baby, drill. Right? Isn't that the message? Isn't the message is we need more drilling? That's our problem. We need the Keystone Pipeline to come right through the center of the country. And look, I know the argument. The argument is we need jobs. And I agree, we need jobs. We need to be building some really big freaking stuff. And I'm in favor of building lots of big stuff, lots of big projects. I'm in favor of it. Problem is, not so much in favor of building something that's not going to benefit us. There's got to be a plan that says, okay, we're going to build this, but this is how it's going to benefit us as a nation. And I looked at Brazil, because I don't know if you've seen the protests and the strikes and the stuff going on across Brazil. Evidently, the government of Brazil spent are spending like $15 billion to build these stadiums and all of this stuff to host the 2014 World Cup. And I guess they're going to try and go after some other things as well. But you've got the economic expert people going, well, it's only going to bump your national economy by a very small amount, 0.2%. Not nearly enough to pay the $15 billion. Was the building of these stadiums and all of this infrastructure for this game worth it? Could you not have used that $15 billion? And see, the argument is not, do we spend the money or don't we? The argument is, okay, if we're going to use this as a stimulus, our stadiums and soccer fields is that the best use of the money? Or could you build something, some other infrastructure, using the same people, doing the same kind of construction, just doing it in a different way with a different outcome? Is that better? We've seen across this country where we're told that, well, we got to build a sports stadium. And I just, before I came back from break, I was just looking at pictures of the Silver Dome in Detroit, and it is, well, it's sad. It's falling down. It's the ceiling, the dome is falling in. It's just, the place is trashed, and it's just left there as a relic to crumble. And you think about the money that went into the investment of that, and you kind of have to go, did we need to spend additional resources on something else where we could have used that money for, I don't know, anything but a stadium? Is it worth it? Could we be investing in something that benefits society a little bit better than just every Sunday having a football game? So I'm not against building. But this idea of building what we're sold is all we have. This is all we can do. This is all we have, and they're taking this from us. To me, that's just how the shiny thing, how the distraction happens. And to me, this idea, we should have been going full lore, full speed ahead. This idea that we get off the juice, we get off the fossil fuels, and we really become energy independent. Not through drill baby drill, but through some rational thought. Because we can have solar, we can have wind, we can have all of those things. Just a matter of will. Anyway, if you missed any portion of the program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, always there for your entertainment, your enjoyment. Stitcher on the smartphone, that's where you go to get the podcast as well. Take the program on the go. iTunes, all of that stuff, YouTube, all there. I'd love to hear from you. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick@thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
It's color like the tide of flood beneath the Buddha sway. Imperial, mysterious, in amorous array. Democracy is coming to the USA.
We see the storm out on the horizon. The clouds grow dark in the midnight sky. We feel the fire burning in the belly. The flame leaps out with an angry cry. From the underground where the night is endless. From the mine and rig where our work is done. From every plant and every nation we cry. We are many, we are one. Power, there is power in the union. Power, there is power in our hands. Power, we stand and fight. There's power in a union of many lands.